Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Goffstown School Board. I call this meeting at 7 o'clock. If everybody can rise and say the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And before we sit, we had 2 deaths this week from our community. I'd like to take a moment of silence for Laura Wiggin. She was a para at New Boston Central School, and her daughter is a teacher at Mountain View Middle School. And a former school board member, Ben Hampton, died on February 6th. So if we could just take a moment of silence for them. Okay, thank you so much. All right, correspondence.
We included tonight the most recent legislative summary from the New Hampshire School Boards Association. I think everyone should have received that via email, but we've got a hard copy here for you this evening as well.
Great, thank you, Brian. Accommodations, good news, Lily?
Yeah, so this week is Winter Carnival Week, and so we're having dress-up days every day this week. Today was pajama day. I did not come in my pajamas. I changed.
You could have. We would have welcomed that.
You know. And Seussical was this weekend. It went very well, and shows are also next weekend. Yeah, and those are the main things.
Nice, awesome, thank you. Go ahead, Wendy.
Great, I have a couple of updates. First of all, from Bartlett. Fungo, the New Hampshire Fisher Cats mascot, visited Bartlett on Friday for a whole school assembly, and he challenged the students to read 5 books outside of the regular curriculum this year. Nice. So every student that meets that challenge will earn 2 free tickets to a game at Delta Dental Stadium at their special reading challenge celebration. Over at Bartlett, it also is Spirit Week. The first graders celebrated the 100th day of school back on February 9th. They dressed as 100-year-old students and participated in projects throughout the day, and the pictures were amazing. I got the chance to go over.
Now, Wendy, I was there on that day, and they all kind of look like me. Does
that say something? I kept that part out. The first and second graders also participated in classroom spelling bees last week, so congratulations to all of those that won their classroom contests. The third graders had an in-school field trip called Eyes on Owls. They had presenters that brought 5 types of owls with them, and later in the day, they dissected owl pellets to discover the types of animals that they ate. And 40 of the 4th graders are taking part in show chorus, and they are very excited that they will be performing here at Goffstown High School in late April. Over at Mountain View, last Friday, they celebrated Kindness Day. They sold candy grams to spread kindness and benefit the Pediatric Cardiology Unit at Chad. The Art Club painted kindness rocks, and they placed them around the school. A special shout out to MVP, the parent group, who bought kindness bracelets for every student and staff member at Mountain View. They held assemblies at each grade level with the focus of kindness and had a video message from Justin from Recycled Percussion sharing the importance of spreading kindness that they showed at the assembly for all of the students. Winter Carnival is this Thursday at Mountain View from 5:30 to 7:30. And a couple of other things, they also have set up step-up days for all grades, including New Boston, so transition planning is already up and running. And lastly, the Mountain View wrestling team attended the state championship yesterday in Keene. 4 of their wrestlers received the title of state champion in their weight division, including a 5th grader, which is pretty remarkable. So congratulations to 5th grader Ashley Eli, 8th grader Ashley Mee, 8th graders Tyler Osario and Ben Walton for winning. And second place finishers Lucas Brown, Cole Nault, and Chris Finnegan. So all of them have received bids to go to New England's in Fitchburg, Massachusetts next month.
Awesome.
So lots of great things going on.
Yes, wow, thank you, Wendy. Anyone else for accommodations, good news? Go ahead, Retta.
I'd just like to mention I had the opportunity to attend the Seussical musical, and as always, it's absolutely astounding. The actors are really great. and even Lily was there in a role you'll never see her play on the school board. So go see it.
Thank you, Retta. Anyone else for commendations, good news? All right, seeing none, we'll open up to public comment. Is there any public comment tonight?
Yes, I do have a public comment tonight.
Okay, you can sit at one of the microphones and just state your name and address for the record.
All right, I am Cassidy Plord, and I live on Pasture Drive in Goffstown. I'm here representing Goffstown Environmental Club. We do strongly believe that our school will benefit from solar panels that we have previously had. It would save the district money by creating cleaner energy for our school to support not only the high school, but as well as our other schools. Hopefully, that would be in a long time. But we did used to have solar panels on the top of our roofs, and they were unfortunately disregarded during one of the cleanings. We have already reached out to other schools who have done this. We've reached out to Dover's principal as well as Exeter. We've already looked at and applied to a few grants, including the one that Dover has given us, and we would like to come back to get some more permission to see what the budget is like and try to see if we can further our reach for solar panels and clean energy and sustainability within our school system.
Awesome, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Look forward to hearing from you again. Anyone else for public comment? All right, seeing none, I'll close public comment. Tonight we do have two presentations. The first one is our audit result. Everybody should have their packets and everything. Brian, do you?
Yeah, so
open that up?
everyone, I think, will remember Cheryl Pratt from Plodzik and Sanderson, so we're pleased to welcome Cheryl back, and Laura Taylor is here as well, who does the majority of the audit on our side of things. Mr. Gross, anything else to tee up before Cheryl starts?
No, just want to, I know Laura is in the audience, and to say that Laura does the audit would be, I guess, an understatement. I mean, she spends many months doing that, a lot of preparation along with the rest of the business office staff. So I want to thank Laura publicly for all the work that she does to make that process go smoothly. So thank you, Laura.
All right.
The floor is yours, Cheryl.
Thank you. Good night, good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. And I also want to piggyback on Mr. Gross's sentiments of Ms. Taylor. If she didn't do what she does to help us get through the audit, we would not be sitting here tonight to get your audit, to do the presentation. It's a pleasure to come here and do the audit every year. Because everything is ready to go, and we're not having to, unfortunately, in many places, we have to go in, we start for a day or two, and then we have to leave because everything's not ready, and then come back. But that's not the case here, so you should be very proud of the staff in your business office, because she and everyone else in there, they do a remarkable job. And it makes our job much easier. So with that, I want to go to page 1 of the audit report. And on page 1 through page 3 is your opinion letter. This is what tells you whether or not your financial statements are or are not fairly presented. And I mentioned last year that there was a change to the opinion letter. They've added more verbiage in it, and they've changed around the order of the paragraphs describing what is being said in the opinion letter. So luckily, in the first paragraph, you now can go right to there and determine what opinion you are being rendered. An opinion is rendered on each opinion unit. And for this year, you received an adverse opinion on your governmental activities, but an unmodified opinion on your general fund, or major general fund, major grants fund, and all the other aggregate remaining fund information accounts. The adverse opinion is described, the reason for it is described on page 2. And it's because, and you are not alone, that you have not obtained an actuarial study for the local portion of OPEB, which is your other post-employment benefits. A lot of towns and school districts do not pay that additional cost to obtain that actuarial study. So you by far are not alone in not obtaining that. It's an additional cost that people at times do not feel it is worth the money to obtain that study. It also does not impact any type of borrowing that you may want to do, any bonds or notes that would be issued. At this time, the bond banks and the banks are well aware of this situation, and they do not hold that against any entity at this time from obtaining a bond if you did not get that actuarial study. If it ever became an issue, we would certainly contact Mr. Gross immediately and let him know that what we've heard, but right now, there's no issue with that. Now we're going to go to page 14, which is your balance sheet for your governmental funds. As you can see, you have your major general fund. Your general fund is your operating fund, and it is always considered a major fund. As well, you have your grants fund that was considered major, and then your other governmental funds. The other governmental funds are further detailed in the back of the report on page 48. And that total column on page 48 is lifted and is what is represented on page 14 under that other governmental funds column. Those funds are made up of the food service fund, private donations, student activity funds, the capital project fund, and permanent trust funds. Student activities is fairly new. In the last few years, it was always reported as an agency fund. But with GASB 84, they reclassified the way we report student activity funds. So now they are reported as a special revenue fund. So you will see those on Schedule 4 and 5 in the back of the report. But back to page 14 for your general fund. You ended the year with a total fund balance of $4,628,883. That is made up of non-spendable fund balance of $105,151. That represents your inventory at year end as well as the prepaid items. Committed fund balance at the end of the year of $484,036 represents your expendable trust funds for $284,036 and voted appropriations at the March 22 meeting of $200,000. And if you turn to page 37 of the report, note 15, it gives you a nice or a further breakdown of these fund balance types. Now, the expendable trust funds I've mentioned in the past, because of GASB Statement 54, that statement determined a new hierarchy of fund balance as well as new fund type names. So because the expendable trust funds are substantially funded by the general fund, and if it's over 50%, you have to blend that fund with the fund that is transferring the money. Thus, because your expendable trust funds are funded from annual transfers, we blend your expendable trust funds for reporting purposes only with the general fund. And then that fund balance for those trust funds gets recorded as committed fund balance. It's committed because it is voted on, or as agents to expend, the board has the authority to authorize the use of that money.
And Cheryl, if I may, that means the money is unavailable for tax reduction. That's really what it means.
In those expendable trust funds,
Yes.
yes. It has to be used for the specified
For the purpose that the voters voted.
Correct.
Thank you.
The assigned fund balance of $1,224,978 is made up of encumbrances, which you can see further detailed on Schedule 2 on page 46 of the report. You can see where it is broken down by function of how that money is going to be carried forward into the present year, as well as retained fund balance of $865,000, which is considered The RSA is for a contingency fund. There was a lot of confusion over this RSA to reserve this money. It does not go into a fund. It's just a classification of fund balance at year end. So this money can be used for emergency purposes or turned back to reduce the taxes going forward. As well as student activity funds. There are student activity funds, and then there are district-related student activity funds. The $14,391 is district-related student activity funds that we have recategorized in the general fund. And finally, you have an unassigned fund balance in the general fund of $2,814,718. That is further broken down on page 47 of the report. So you can basically see where we started the year and where you ended the year. You started with unassigned fund balance of $3,335,402, of which you used that money to reduce the school district assessment for the current year. You also used there was $200,000 that was used to transfer to trust funds. And then you ended up with an overall budget surplus that gets added back to unassigned fund balance of $3,206,883. That can be broken down on the previous two pages, pages 45 and 46. So you can see where the money was. You either received more than you anticipated in revenue, or that you spent less than you had appropriated, to give you that overall budget surplus. There was a decrease in non-spendable fund balance of $7,834. Your prepaid and inventories from last year to this year, or from this year to last year, went down, as well as there was an increase in the use of unassigned fund balance for transfer purposes of $200,000, to bring you to the $2,814,718.
Cheryl, if I could just add a few things. Last year's audit report and this year's audit report, they tell the story of COVID in the sense that we had very unpredictable expenditures, mostly underspends. You know, we all know the issues with transportation, significant underspend there. We couldn't fill some teaching jobs, et cetera. Those funds were used to offset taxes. So the school district is not holding on to that. There's no crazy spending at the end of year type of thing. It's going to offset taxes. When I did your revenue projections for this upcoming budget, that number is a lot lower. It was $2 million. Again, trying to balance what I think it might be, to try to get back towards, more normalcy. In prior years, we were looking at like $1.7 million of amount to be used to reduce taxes. So clearly, that number has been a lot higher. And what that does is it lowers the tax rate, what folks have to spend on their tax bill. We're slowly weaning ourselves off that, okay? So that number is going, 2.8, 2 million, it's gonna lower. So just wanted that to be clear, and it's just been, as you all know, we talk about financials all the time. It's been very challenging. We got extra revenue from the state, if you recall, for retirement. That was like 265, I think. So again, we didn't predict that. So when you're doing an audit, you're saying, oh, you under budgeted your revenues. Well, we didn't think we were going to get this money from the state. If you read the paper the last couple of days, the governor is now talking about infusing another $100 or $200 million. I didn't plan on that in my revenue projections for town meeting and deliberative session. So if it happens, it'll just show up as over more revenues than what we had anticipated. So these are the things that Cheryl sees all the time. I try to explain to you, it is very difficult to predict what the state's going to give us in terms of funding and changes. So just wanted to get that out there in the minutes.
And it does, and like you have this unanticipated revenue that pops up. We're dealing with on the town side that they just got highway block grant money that they did not anticipate that they can use for specific purposes, that no one knew was coming. So it just, lately, it seems to be popping up more frequently.
Yeah.
But I got to believe it's going to come down
That
when
will
that
end
money is.
eventually,
yeah,
but-
when it's gone. All right. Now, in the back of the report, because you receive, are any questions so far?
I have one, Cheryl.
Sure.
And I'm sure you're going to get to this a little more. A number of years ago, before we brought in your auditing firm, you will recall the financial circumstances that we found ourselves in, that there was money improperly being retained on the school district's books. Are there any of those funds anymore?
No. No, you have addressed them, and that's one thing that I really appreciate as an auditor, that you address the situation immediately. You found, I came into this meeting 3 years ago, and you listened to all my findings, about 2.5-hour dissertation on findings. And as you can see, I'll show you shortly, there are no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in your reports anymore. You have addressed all the situations. And there's certain things we always look for. When we do our audits, we have to have an element of unpredictability. So we'll look at certain things, we read your minutes, all the minutes throughout the year, looking for things that we should be questioning. And there is no more money that's tucked away in the corner anymore. It's all properly accounted for where it should be, in either a special revenue fund, a capital project fund, or the general fund.
And just one follow-up, Cheryl. And when you come in and do the Goffstown School District audit, you have a team,
Yes.
right? There's not one solo practitioner, so there's only one person looking at the books. You have a dynamic team of multiple people. In the couple years that we've been using your firm, you've actually changed the lead person a number of times already.
Yes, and I actually changed that person again this past cycle. Kyle Gingras was the manager in charge of Goffstown School District's audit. I was here to oversee. I came for a day. I had some conflicts this year, but I was here overseeing what they were doing. But Kyle ran the audit, as well as we had new staff and senior auditors on site doing the audit. And we come as a group. We will have anywhere from 3 to 5, 6 people here on site, in and out, and we rotate the people that come in. Some have certain skill sets that they come in and they strike. So for example, student activity funds. I have a few people that will come in, do student activity funds, and do disbursement testing. Then they move on to the next job. Kyle was here the whole time and looks at things a little differently than I may look at, as I think I discussed with Laura, or that Ashley Miller looked at in the prior year. Everybody sees things a little differently. So it's nice. We have a rotating group of people that will come through and do the audit.
Thank you for that. And again, for the newer board members, our last auditor was a solo practitioner. It was one individual who did all of the auditing. So I rather appreciate the team approach as well as changing up the leads and mixing people up. I think that's healthy.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and again, like with the single audit, we have people that are some people are trained in audits of the federal money, and those people come in to do the single audit. Your single audit is done when we do the SAU audit. That is done in October when we have certain people that can come in and do the single audit, and that's another specialty that we offer. We're a firm where we have presently 19 governmental auditors. I'm one of 2 directors for the firm, and we have 17 staff members under us. And we're actually looking for more staff.
You're not
So if
looking
you know
either,
of
though.
any auditors, please let me know. But it's a great firm in that we can rotate. It's like, what we'll do is we'll actually sometimes when people will say, well, we've been with you for a while, well, we can actually change up audit partners as well. And we've done that to give you another perspective. So that's the beauty of the firm. It's big enough that we can do those types of things.
And if I may,
Yeah, go ahead.
just as a 20-second build, you talked about this other thing called a single audit. Many people don't know what that is, but it's a review, correct me if I'm incorrect, of the federal funding that we receive total, because we receive, is it still $500,000?
Yes, you have to receive over $750,000
Up to
in order to
$750,000.
have that, but you received as a district $3.4 million in federal money for this past year.
Thank you.
So when we do have to perform that audit, we have to test the federal requirements on that money, depending on what program we test for the given year. In this particular year, under audit, we tested the food service fund. So because of certain criteria, it was considered a major fund, and it hadn't been audited. A major fund has to be audited once every 3 years. Because it hit that criteria of being over $750,000 and not being audited in 3 years, we did the testing on the food service program. And I'm pleased to report to you, if you would turn to page 55 of the report, you will see at the bottom of the report that you had no financial statement findings and no federal award findings and question costs. So that is very commendable, and we do a lot of testing. We ask a lot of questions on internal controls, and I know I myself am a stickler for internal controls. If we don't see something that you're not doing, we will write you up for it, and either depending on the significance of it, if it's significant or it's not, doesn't reach the level of a significant deficiency, we will report that. And here, again, you'll see that we had no such findings. So that is, again, you should be applauded, your business office and your food service department, for keeping good records and processes and procedures over that food service money.
Our food service director is wonderful.
Yes. Yes. And I've audited her in many years ago. I've been doing this a long time in another district, and she's very good. Oh, there she is. I didn't even know you were there. But no, you do a fabulous job. When I heard she was coming here, I was like, oh, good. But then I get sad if I'm at another district and she left. So. But, so no, this is very good that you passed the test on the single audit. Because unfortunately, if you do not pass the single audit, then you have to write what we call as a corrective action plan, and you have to tell the government how you're going to fix the situation, and then they will hound you relentlessly at times. Did you fix it, and why? If you didn't, why didn't you? So, but again, I think a few years ago, we did have such findings here, but they're gone. So that's how far you've come, and you should be all very proud of yourselves. Because I can come to board meetings year after year and have the same findings, and it gets to a point, if they're serious, and you're not taking corrective action on findings, I've stepped away from an audit before, because it gets to the point where it's not, it's almost like an independence issue. You're trying to get a board to listen and make corrective action, and they don't. So you just kind of beat your head against the wall. But here, you're fantastic.
Thank you, Cheryl. So, anybody have any questions, comments? Go ahead, Dan.
I do, because when I read through the report, we had talked a little bit about, there was something in here I read, we had a very good fund balance, or maybe an over fund balance in the food services. There was a comment there. And
Okay.
if you want to talk about that, I have a
Sure.
couple questions after.
Sure. In the governance letter, one thing we do, and I'm sure Megan knows about this, one of the requirements, and this was a big issue years ago, is net cash resources. There's a test that we will do a quick calculation to determine whether or not you have excess fund balance in your food service fund. Because of all the federal money coming into in every district that we audit, and we do over 80 school district audits a year, we are testing to make sure you do not exceed that net cash resource test. Here in the district, you did. So you have more fund balance on hand than 3/10 of the average expenses for the food service fund. When you do have net excess fund balance, it's recommended that you work with the Department of Ed in the food service department to make sure that you come up with a plan on how to spend that money down. So that is what we recommended in the governance letter, because again, it was not a requirement of single audit with the food service fund this year. The federal government has gotten away from that test, but we always like to perform that test to let you know that, hey, you probably have too much money here and you need to have a plan to spend it. And we have run across this in probably at least 40% of the audits that we did this summer on food service.
So Cheryl, I just wanted, just for the public's benefit, the reason why we had that surplus, say, in fund balance was because we received much greater reimbursements from the federal government for our meals,
Right.
coupled with the fact that we had some staffing vacancy type things. So, but mostly, like, the majority of that was because we got more federal dollars, okay?
Right.
No control. So this is not a situation where we were charging a higher rate that needed to be paid. As a matter of fact, that's still an issue in terms of it maybe not being high enough. But it's really more of just the incredible amount of federal funds that came in during COVID.
Right, and if I may, on page 49, you'll see for the revenues, and again, this is common for all the school districts in the state with food service programs. If you look on page 49, the other local revenue for Goffstown School District was, and that other local revenue would include food service sales. It was only $116,752, whereas in years past, that number is probably, yeah.
Yes.
It's like maybe $900,000 in sales. That is because of all this money coming in from the federal government, and they started giving you this money when COVID started. They just said students did not have to pay for lunches. They were going to reimburse the districts for this, and it has continued until now. So that's why that influx of federal money, you had no control, you just got to receive it, and you did not have to charge students for meals, other than maybe some a la carte items.
Yes, there was a la carte charges, but everybody ate for free, and everybody ate, it was great.
Which is good too, so. So yes, that's why, so we do that test because of that money coming in, and just we wanted to make, because it's not a requirement of the single audit, we felt it was our responsibility to make you aware that you did have that excess revenue or fund balance, that you should have a plan to spend it down, which a lot of places will spend that money on new equipment, like a walk-in fridge or tables or dishwashers, mixers, all kinds of things. But you can use that money for certain purposes within the fund, but it's got to be used for the fund.
So you had mentioned the spend down could be for capital equipment, which makes sense for things that we would need. Two other things that come to mind, which, looking at the paperwork, would appear not possible. One of them would be a payback to the general fund for how the general fund actually supported the food service fund a few years ago. And can you address that real quick?
I was just talking to Ms. Taylor before the meeting. I've got to contact the state. There is something in writing, I believe, that says once the money goes into the food service fund, you cannot pull it back out. And I'm going to contact the state tomorrow and see if I can get you something in writing that states that. I don't know if you're aware of that.
I'm not aware, I think that would be it does have to go to the state for that type of question, because those fiscal years also are closed, so that
Right.
may be also part of it. And it gets if that is an avenue that we want to look at, it gets very complicated because some of the work was related to food service, some of it was not. And if it was not, then we can't pay for that. So it's a pretty complicated piece.
Which pretty makes sense. If I look at the food service, only 100, let's say roughly a little less than 117,000 came in. So there isn't, let me call it general funds, to pay back the general funds. They were all federal funds, and I'm sure the federal funds have a lot of restrictions that says, yeah, we're not going to supplant the general fund for this.
Right.
So-
And that's why you'll see on page 4, page 48, Schedule 4, the food service fund money, under GASB 54, there's the hierarchy of the 5 different types of fund balance. Food service money is considered restricted
Yep.
because there are so many federal restrictions on how that money can be spent.
Thank you.
So I am going to,
Yeah.
we talked, and I'm going to contact the state tomorrow to see if I can talk to somebody, or they can get me in touch with somebody that can give me something physically in writing on that.
And Cheryl, I know I was at an association meeting, I heard the same exact thing, that once it goes over, it cannot go back to the
can't-
general fund.
right.
I just don't, it might have been someone from the from the state food service, but I mentioned it to Dan because he asked, and I just don't know who told it to me, but I thought,
Right.
I know I heard it.
And I've heard it, and I know they're very, but when you look at some of the guidance on the food service program, it doesn't come right out and spell it, but I have heard it as well.
I think once it goes in, it becomes
It's
restricted, and that's it.
Yeah. But I'm going to look into that.
Great,
And
thank
get
you.
you something.
Cheryl, you did indicate that those funds could be used for purchasing perhaps tables.
Yes, it could be maybe foods, for the cafeteria, or.
So we typically have targeted equipment in the kitchen. We have not targeted tables. And we do have replacement tables in CIP, I believe, for multiple schools. So that could be something that we could talk more about. And those are monies that otherwise would have come out of the general fund. So it's, maybe a little bit of a shell game, but.
Right. And you would definitely have to run that, like, if that was your intent, I would definitely run that by the
state.
Department of Ed to get approval before you did that, in case something has changed that I'm not aware of, but.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Anyone else have any questions for Cheryl?
Can we say this is a fantastic job, and thank you, administration,
Yes,
for
I was going to do that.
following
Yes,
the guidelines and
absolutely.
doing a great job.
And thank you to Cheryl
Thank
and your
you.
team for
thank you
helping
very
us out,
much.
and Laura back there, and
You know,
the whole
I-
business administration
I
group.
have to say, though, that I look at some of the people in the audience, and it's also the schools and their staffs,
Yeah.
because when we ask these things and then they deliver.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a total group effort in
Team
terms
effort.
of, because we do hound the schools about certain things, and, look at Frank, and we talk about student activities and all these fun things and all these rules and stuff, but this is kind of the reason, and they do a really great job in to execute on what's needed. And so it's a team effort.
Well, if we think about where we were a few years ago, I think, Scott, your department, you, Laura, the folks in the business office have done a great job, and we're just so appreciative of the work that Plodzik and Sanderson has done to get us on track and then keep us on track.
Absolutely.
So thank you.
Thank you so much. So if everybody is good, then Cheryl, you can go home.
Well, thank you.
I mean, you can stay, but.
See you Wednesday?
See you Wednesday.
That's right, Wednesday.
Yeah, don't forget, Scott.
I was
All right.
hoping for a snowstorm.
Oh, that's coming Thursday.
That's
No,
Thursday.
snow,
We're off the
snow.
day.
Mr. Chair, just
Yes, go
one
ahead, Jared.
statement if I can make it. Just want to reference page 50, looking at Bartlett and Maple, and the difference in our asset totals between the two schools for our student activity fees, or student funds.
What page are you on?
Page 50,
50, okay.
cash and cash equivalents for our assets between the two schools.
Okay.
Those just seem a little disparate between those two elementary schools, and maybe if we could just
have a greater understanding of why we are disparate between those two elementary schools.
Scott, you
Sorry,
want to
I was
field
talking
that?
to Dan. What page was
Page
that?
50.
Page 50. Or can Cheryl
Not
answer that?
necessarily expecting an answer today.
My short answer with, I believe that those are monies that are raised by the PTA. So this highlights the difference between how much money they're raising at Bartlett, 4840, versus Maple, 33,454.
So is that accurate? Lori, do you have an answer for that?
I think I can try to give Jared an answer. So
Yeah.
Bartlett has very minimal student activity funds. They don't have any specific student club accounts. They use minimal dollars for field trips or assemblies or PBIS. Maple Ave has a very large student council that does a great job fundraising for themselves, and they have field trips for each grade, and they also have a few additional clubs, and so I believe that's why they have a larger cash balance. They have a much more active student activity than Bartlett does.
Just if I may advance
Yeah, go ahead.
a little bit. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just looking at the disparity in that new term that everybody uses of equity, I just worry that some of our students at Bartlett might not be getting the best experience as those at Maple are getting, and what could we do as a school board to encourage that type of participation that might be needed at Bartlett?
I think that's fair.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would also say that just to remind the board that when we did add more co-curriculars, we added co-curriculars at all of our schools, Bartlett especially, and we tried to recognize the fact that, so I think 3 or 4 co-curriculars are now at that elementary school, and there's almost an equal number, maybe one more, I think, at Maple Avenue. In these, types of things, the budget does support a lot. So we do pay for field trip transportation and some field trip admissions at all schools. Sometimes they want to do above and beyond and more of that. It's also indicative, so it's not just this, but if you look at like the Bartlett PTA versus the Maple Avenue PFT, that's an even bigger disparity. So, which this is not part of. So I think it's true. Their ability to fundraise, et cetera, is far better at Maple than it does appear to be at Bartlett, having been to both their PTA meetings.
Hang on a second. Ellen had her hand up, and then you can go ahead,
It's a
Jenny.
very good question, but that Jared raises. Also need to remember, Bartlett's about 200 kids, Maple's over 500.
Exactly, yeah.
Huge difference. I would say as a board, if anything, reiterate our support at all our schools, but particularly at our smallest, to encourage the student body and their PTO, I think it is, to do more fundraising if they need to for their various activities that they either have or want to bring in. We encourage that as a board.
Yeah.
But there's a huge difference. I mean, it's less than half the population of students, so it's much smaller. I guess if anything, I'm not so sure I want to compare the two schools in our district, but other schools that are as small as Bartlett, 200 kids in southern New Hampshire, what kind of fundraising do they have to see if that number is a significant part of why there's such a disparity? Maple Ave's always been very active.
Right.
In that, I don't know if it's why, but other than the number of people there.
Right.
But they're always have been, very active group of parents, the PTA, the PFT, I should say.
PFT at Maple, right.
But encourage, as a board, that Bartlett and all our schools.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ellen. Go ahead, Jenny.
I would just like to point out, though, it's it's not the parents' group responsibility to earn money for student activities. It really is stuff that should come out of the budget. Parents' group should add enrichment stuff if they choose to, but I don't think field trips or things that should come under stipend, like, I don't know, like a music teacher or a music activity after school or something, should be something, or a person that comes in with an activity should come out of parents' funds. I think that's something that should come out of the school's budget and anything that the parents earn should be enrichment stuff for the kids. Do they does every grade have a field trip at Bartlett?
They do. I've widely encouraged field trips at all schools this
Yep.
year.
And they
they're
have
doing a lot in the
assemblies?
school
Yep.
too, Jenny, just so you know, like,
Well, like the owl thing.
the owl's a great
The owl
example.
thing is kind of an inverse field trip. So
Right.
instead
Yeah.
of the kids going to the owls came to
Yep.
the kids.
All
Okay.
schools.
But do they get the same benefit from having an in-school one as they do as hopping on a bus and going somewhere to
The
Squam Lake and
challenge, Ginny,
seeing
has
them?
been over the last couple of years is the bus driver situation. So when we can, and again, the superintendent is absolutely correct, we are encouraging to resume back to normalcy in terms of going on field trips. And so far, we've been pretty good with getting that transportation, but there's also something to be said about when some of these folks come to our schools.
Oh, yeah.
And as Wendy mentioned, I mean, that, I heard nothing but rave reviews about what happened at Maple, I think with that owl. They're doing artist in residence at Mountain View, I think, later on in the spring. So I think we're getting back to normalcy, where I'm seeing that because Laura and I, we're seeing the bills come in
Yeah.
on field trip transportation and all those other things. So I think we're getting back to where we were.
Because I'm really thinking that the kids from Bartlett really could use more stimulation and more activities other than
So,
less.
to give you one example, and I'm looking at Kim, I mean, Bartlett has come over here for musical-type performances. They're coming back again this week. So
In 3 days.
So, whereas, say, Maple Avenue has not come to the high school because maybe they did something else, Bartlett's now come twice.
Yeah, there we go.
So, and those kids are getting that musical and that more performing arts experience. So I think each school kind of does things a little bit differently, but in this case, Bartlett has been, going to be here twice, and Maple Avenue didn't come over this year.
Okay,
So,
just want to make sure that,
Yep.
they're getting, and parent groups aren't responsible for.
Right. Thank you, Jenny. All right, so is everybody good with the audit? All right, Cheryl, you can go home now. Thank you. Thank you. All right, so our next presentation is from the high school with the lunch. This was brought to us a couple months ago, and this is a follow-up tonight on the One Lunch program at the high school. So we should have a packet in our stuff tonight that kind of goes over the presentation.
Callie's going to be firing up the
we got the screen.
projector. And so Callie is our Dean of Students, and also joining her, looking rather dapper. This is
I
not
know.
his, this would not be the pajama attire for
But he's
Dr.
directing
McMurray.
traffic at the high school.
You all set, Callie?
Right.
I'm going to move to the side.
You can just scooch down that way.
Thanks, baby.
That's
Brian, would you like to wait, or can I kind of kick this off? And mine's strictly a brief intro, and I would concur what was said. Lil and her whole, the cast and crew was spectacular, so well done on Susan Cole, the musical. As I often do during budget season, I say, here's Kim, this is going to be kind of, here's Callie and Mike. And I would just want to say, I've thought about this a lot, the whole one lunch concept. I think it's gone very well. I'll save most of my remarks if you have questions for me at the end. But I think it's similar to what was talked about with the audit. It's taking a long time to get to the point where I think you have a culture where one lunch could work and work well. I believe that's the case here. Kelly, you'll be here. I think that's the case here at Goffstown High School. And I wouldn't want to be a new principal in a new place with 1,000 kids and say, hey, let's try one lunch. I think it would not go well. There's great staff, and I was thinking also as I was listening to the audit, I'll use for an example this year at lunch, whether we had 2 or 1, I think there's been zero issues with any seniors. Zero. Juniors, I think they could be close to 0 as well. Sophomores and freshmen were a bit of the training and reiterating and, the boundaries and rule setting and expectations. But it's that leadership piece. And then when I think of leadership, we have a great administrative team here. The duty teachers during lunch do a spectacular job. Our safety person, Mark Cousson, does a spectacular job. So there's a whole bunch of caring adults that are present during lunch, and it makes a tremendous, tremendous difference. Before I pass it off to Kelly and Mike, I will say, or Mrs. Rosmack and Dr. McMurray, is that the work that they do daily is really, really important. It's really difficult, and they make it look easy. And part of making it look easy is back to, I think, when you really have the train running well and they're running on time. When and if someone missteps, it's easy to quickly redirect. And I think that's my observation and opinion of where we are right now at Goffstown High School, is that the vast majority of students every single day are doing exactly what they are supposed to be doing. Younger kids see the older kids doing that, and it starts to really roll. When there are missteps, Callie and Mike are both really sophisticated and nuanced in how to redirect students and working with their families, and they're excellent at what they do, and we're super fortunate of what they do. So I'm really you guys both have your mics, and great presentation. Thank you for putting it together.
Musical chairs.
So I think everybody has a copy of the presentation. I think it's up.
This is it?
GTV is it as well. To give you
Yeah, if it's a PowerPoint, we don't have it.
We don't have that.
Oh, I
It's an
apologize.
email.
Oh, okay. I apologize.
That's okay. Okay, look up there.
For those of you who might not know, way back when Goffstown went to the block schedule, at one point in time, we actually had 3 lunches. So there was about 1,200 students in the high school at the time, and like it was with 2 lunches, the building was split up based on where you were during your 5th or 6th period class. As you can see from the schedule, that means that was a lot of transitions throughout the day. The most challenging time of the day, and I can tell you because I had B lunch as a teacher, my class was in a spot that had B lunch. So you would go to class for the first hour, then you would break for lunch for a half an hour, and then really hope that the kids came back ready to wrap up for the last half hour of the period. But it was just a lot. It was a lot of moving, a lot of transitions, a lot of disruption. Around 2017, we see enrollment kind of going down. So at that time, there was the option to see if we can reduce some of those transitions, limit it a little bit, and the move was to go to 2 lunches, right? A lunch, B lunch, again, based on where students were in their 5th or 6th period classes. And kind of around that time, it expanded where students could eat, right? The majority of the students might have been eating in the cafeteria, but would find spots, whether it's in the hallway, on a bench, in a classroom, wherever that spot was for them. So the challenge that we have with 2 lunches, the first one up there is supervision. This is not a new challenge, and it's not just lunches, right? We have a big building with a lot of students. We're always thinking about supervision, safety, accountability. How can we do a good job? Challenge with the 2 lunches was always that piece of who's supposed to be in lunch, who's supposed to be in class. Also the inconsistent lunch schedules. You could have A lunch one day at 11 o'clock and then B lunch the next day and not be eating until 12:30, right?
And that also played into that challenge that Kelly mentioned of supervising who was supposed to be in class versus who was supposed to be in lunch. Because it shifted, there wasn't that consistency of, I know you're supposed to be in class right now, not down here in the cafeteria, because the next day that could be their schedule. So really being able to supervise during that 2 hours of the school day, the biggest piece was were students escaping, if you will, from the classroom to try and see their friends. And taking extended bathroom breaks and missing key instructional time.
And kind of tied to that, the big piece with the lunches based on halls and where you were in the building, one of the struggles was trying to limit classroom distractions. So and the biggest one being during B lunch. So B lunch, the upstairs was on lunch, downstairs is in class. So the struggle would be keeping students that are supposed to be in lunch out of the 100 and 200 wings. And the challenge for the lunch duty teachers, like Kim is saying, is this student in class going to the bathroom, or is that someone from lunch, trying to go down the hall? And again, paired with the students sneaking out, trying to take multiple lunches or visit up with their friends, right? So we're seeing a lot of distractions, a lot of issues during this time that then we would spend the rest of the day addressing and managing. So this year, as we were talking about it, this would, come on. There we go. So as we were talking about it as a team, again, we're saying, okay, enrollment is lower, right, has gone down. We're at about 1,000 students, and we had floated the idea, well, what if we try one lunch? Just break up the day where students would have their first 2 blocks of the day, and then everybody at 11 o'clock break for lunch, and then after lunch is done, we go back for the last 2 blocks of the day. Students are still able to eat in the cafeteria, classrooms, benches. We have a lot of tables outside, so when weather is nice, they can eat outside, though I will also tell you that a handful of students like to be outside in the winter time too. And they bring a coat and they head outside. Just is what works for them. When we think about it with supervision, so lunches have always, correct me if I'm wrong, almost always had about 5 lunch duty people. So once the schedule is built and classes are covered, preps are covered, there are typically 5 teachers where lunch is their duty. So I assign them throughout the building to spots. And in the cafeteria, Mr. McMurray and Mark Cousin are assigned there. Then the lunch duty people are assigned to the main lobby areas, as well as wandering the halls, upstairs, downstairs. As a part of those duty spots, that also transitions to outside in the warmer weather. We've found that when it is warm, the hallways are empty, so that supervision shifts to the outside where the majority of the kids are. In addition to the lunch duty, right, all of us as administrators are out and about. We have our fabulous student resource officer, Officer Pelletier, is out. The counselors, if it works for their schedule and it works for them, are out and about in the hallways. But just lunch duty, Mr. Cousin, Mr. McMurray, in administration, we have about 12 plus people at any given time out there supervising lunches at any given point. And in terms of the lunch duty, the shift that we made with only one half-hour lunch is that the lunch duty staff monitor lunches for a half an hour, and then that second half hour of time, they have been out helping with the transition back to class. So they are out in the hallways helping usher students to class. They are checking exterior doors for any students that have come, making sure that the doors are secure when lunch is done. And that has been incredibly helpful for that transition from lunch back to class. There we go. So far, it's it's working. It's kind of great. We see, it's, again, less transitions, right? It's one lunch, which means less hallway traffic, less distractions during class time. We're seeing less discipline issues because kids are in class. There's also a lot of flexibility, and Lily can talk a little bit about it, but with student groups, the time for students to meet with their friends, all of their friends are together in one lunch, so they get that time with their friends. They're able to connect with teachers or clubs. Do you have other pieces?
I will speak up, and I'm sure Lily's going to share a little more. As Callie said, I'm usually stationed in the CAF. I did want to kind of get a little different perspective as walking through the halls, so I was prepared for seeing mass chaos or certain levels of chaos, which I like structure and but what I think probably Lily will probably tap into that. But I mean, I know most of the kids at the high school. I know who belongs where. I knew who hangs out with this and that. And it amazed me on some level. First off, I guess the what I saw, which I was kind of expecting, was a couple freshmen being typical freshmen, which we kind of take that for par for the course, and we get that, and we kind of help redirect and maneuver and help them reassimilate back in the kind of normal school setting. But when I peered into classrooms and saw kids who maybe struggled with some level of anxiety or something, and then you see that they found a connection with a group of kids, and they found a place, and it's a safe place. And there's other kids who have gravitated there. I think that was really one of the biggest takeaways that I saw as I was kind of wandering through the hall. And I thought that, really speaks volumes, because we do have a lot of kids. There's 1,000 kids, and, there are a lot of kids that fly below the radar, and the transitions are a struggle. The AB lunch, when we were at 2, they might have friends that they see one day, but the off days, they don't see those kids, and it's that, and there is something to be said for some kids coming on even days, and it's a little harder to come to school on the odd days, and that social piece can be a big deterrent for some of those kids. So I thought that was, I wasn't expecting that. Again, I saw some freshmen who probably, again, teachable moment, kind of giving them a little redirection and feedback, which is something we're obligated to do as well. But I will say, I do lunch. I get the kids on the MST bus. That's about 15 minutes later, and I walk through the halls after, and it is like you wouldn't even know, and there was just 1,000 kids engaging, socializing, being kids, eating lunch. It's like the place is decompressed, and it's like instruction and learning right back, and it's like not even missing a beat. And rarely do we ever get a call that, I know someone was here, they went to lunch, we don't know where they are. I mean, everything just kind of falls back into place, and it's kind of miraculous when you think of the scale of what happens for that 35 minutes. So, and I think, when it comes to teaching and learning, as Callie had said, and the transitions and the disruptions that it causes, certainly having this one lunch model, certainly makes it easier to deploy the staff that you have into designated areas and be more preemptive and kind of, helping maneuver through that. But again, I always go back to the teaching and learning, and for me, one lunch, teaching and learning is maximized more so than 2 lunches, simply on the fact of disruptions, moving parts, transitions, kids being kids and wanting to see their friends and missing some instructional time there, kids walking by classrooms who are supposed to be in session but they're on lunch, and all those moving parts. So, and I will give, a ton of credit to the kids too, because I think really the bulk of the kids, almost all the kids, are they know what to do. I think when Frank said climate and community and expectations, it's you get the younger kids looking up to see what the older kids are doing, and across the board, the older kids are doing what they need to be doing and should be doing. And I think a lot of the kids are, paying attention to that who are younger, and that's helping raise the bar on everybody. So with due time, I think that's only going to improve. But I do think there's certainly been a good foundation. I would agree with you, being a first-year principal coming in and making a swift change like that would probably not be wise, but I think the climate and culture here and the kids know what to do. It's a positive thing, and it's made it.
obviously, one of the big pieces with shifting to one lunch is the amount of students out there at one time, right? And we get that, and so when we were looking to see how it's going, the first guy we turned to when we're talking safety is Officer Pelletier, right, our SRO, to say, does this make sense? What do you think from a safety perspective? And obviously, his first piece is that if kids aren't in class, right, that's going to be a time where we want to pay attention a little bit more. Because especially with lunches, and they can go outside, right, so then there becomes access pieces with the kids in and out, and the doors opening and closing and having to buzz, right, people in multiple times. Obviously, things like drills or lockdowns are always challenging during lunches, right? That would be the same whether it was one lunch or two lunches. And then the accountability piece, right, where exactly in this building is any one student. Though all that being said, right, the piece is that one lunch cuts this time, right, in half, if not more, right? So we go from having lunch span from 11 to 1 o'clock with that blip in the middle to just one half an hour, right, down and dirty, and then done, back to class. And this is a piece that he noted he kind of perceives there being more adults available to supervise. Obviously, it's the duty teachers, that is their duty. Other teachers, it's their lunch, right? They are welcome to their lunch. But their focus is not at that time like in class, and we have fabulous teachers who always, right, give time before school, after school. Many will invite students in to have working lunches. They allow students to eat in their classes. So while it's not their duty, teachers are not also teaching at that time. So, right, everybody knows that all students, oh no. Do you want to share what else Officer Pelletier said?
You know, back in the old days, this is what you would see at like 1 o'clock in the morning on that TV that only had 4, right?
As Kelly was saying, Officer Pelletier is certainly looking through it through the safety lens, the accountability, the building access control. It was the same situation with 2 lunches as is with 1. And that smaller window of when the lunches occur for him was an immediate benefit. Still saying there's probably some logistical things with the building access and things like that. But having it at one period in time obviously cut the concern is for him. He was very open with this. I think at first it was probably a struggle until he saw it in action and then probably started looking at it through the safety lens. You know, I think if we were to tag his vote would be a unanimous yes, that one lunch made all the sense in the world from his perspective, from a safety perspective. Work to be done certainly with some logistics, but that's kind of where he would land. And he's on the beat all the time, so he's saying things. He connects with kids. He knows the kids. So he's getting kind of the same picture from us on a day-to-day basis.
When we talk to staff, right, and we kind of, it says lunch duty staff, but in the poll, when we kind of ask staff, majority are in favor, you know, a handful are kind of like, I could go either way. Specifically asked for some of our lunch duty staff to give some feedback because they're seeing it firsthand as lunch duty teachers, but then also on their flip days, they're teaching. They don't have lunch duty both days. So on one day you have lunch duty, another day it's your teaching day. And overall, the theme is kind of the same. It's nice to have a consistent lunch schedule, right? Everybody knows where they're eating on a given day. That recognition that they are also seeing fewer class interruptions, which is a positive. And then having kids being able to move, get the movement, and connect with their peers is a definite plus. Other ones, and I like the first one, it kind of makes me laugh. That people, they don't feel like they have to block halls anymore. And when you create a roadblock, sometimes kids get really creative in finding a way around that roadblock, so we don't have to play that game of you have to go up this stairwell and stay upstairs. Oh, well, now they're coming down the middle stairs and somehow still end up in somebody else's classroom. To echo what Mike was saying, it is really interesting to see where students have landed and find their comfortable spot. So for some, it might be on a bench, like I said. In others, it's a classroom that they are comfortable in, or they're just going to their period 5 or 6 class early. So it's just nice. The other piece, just that it breaks it even, right? So it's everybody eats. They have half class, break for lunch, go back and just do class. I think one of our other initial concerns when you deploy 1,000 students onto the school to eat lunch is that the thought, is it going to be trashed at the end of a half an hour? And we are finding it's not. The students are really great. Every once in a while, they might need to be redirected, but it's clean. The afternoons, right, as I said, are quieter. Everybody is doing their part, which is nice. Counseling is seeing the positives in the social emotional, right? Those connections that are able to happen. It's also a lot easier to explain to new families that you have lunch at 11. It's not, oh, well, today you'll have lunch at 11, tomorrow you'll have lunch at 12:30. Oh, and that might be a little different on homeroom days. It's just, it is what it is. From our student management piece, it is just nice. We're not dealing with fallout from lunch, right, as much as we were. It's just been smooth. So I put some basic numbers. So student council hold, because we're also interested, what do the students say?
Yeah,
Do you
so,
want to share, Lil?
Yeah, so student council, with the help of Ms. McCann, put out a poll to the entire school, and anyone could have the option to take it. And so some basic numbers, 94% of the students that answered the survey report that they have found a place to eat that works for them, and that goes back to what they were saying about being comfortable and the less anxiety around lunchtime. 84% report that they have enough time to get lunch, and I do have to say the theater kiosk area has been very popular and very helpful. It's always busy and people get through there very quickly.
Thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah.
One of the things that Megan helped us with, right, is that there's also an additional spot for students to purchase lunches, snacks, foods. So they purchase in the cafeteria. There's also food down in the theater for purchase. So there's a couple spots, and then the vending machines and such.
Yeah. About 78 report that they have enough time to eat, which is good because there's 1,000 kids, and a lot of kids get lunch, so it's good that they have enough time. About 77 report that the one lunch period has not stopped them from buying school lunch. And, coming from COVID and it being free and then you having to pay, obviously we don't get I'll just buy lunch today as often as we did when lunch was free. And then 88% are willing to continue with the one lunch this year. But in that regard, 15%, given an option for the future, would elect to go back to the one lunch periods. But when the respondents who responded that they would like to go back, 15% of them said that their early release would be affected by this period of time. And so that number might shift a little. Yeah. Yeah, and I think something else to add would be, for someone like me who's in so many clubs and activities, the mornings can get very busy. And, I normally am here at like 7 every morning for meetings, but now I'm able to meet with kids and my clubs during lunchtime, and that's been very helpful to get things done while also having time in the morning to go in and study for a math test or go, get help on my English paper or whatever I'm doing that morning, or just have a morning off maybe once. But yeah. Yeah.
So takeaways, one lunch, challenges, supervision, initial volume of students in the cafeteria. I will tell you, being in the caf, the kids go through the line somewhere between 12 and 15 minutes is pretty typical. Pizza days are probably a little heavier, and that's about the 15, 16 minutes. So at first it looks lengthy, the line. I tell you, the kids are great. There's 2 lines in there, and I mean, kids are patient. There's a little minor cutting here and there, and they're redirected, but I mean, for the most part, it moves along pretty good. I know the kitchen staff have done everything they can to keep things swinging. Sometimes I'm helping to keep things moving along in the front line. Benefits, fewer transitions. I think if you go back to teaching and learning, these are where you kind of see these most prevalent. Less distractions during instructional time, social, emotional connections with kids, common downtime for students and teachers. And I guess last but not least.
So we kind of like it. So we would, our hope would to be to keep with the one lunch model. Kids have kind of found a groove. We seem to have found our groove. And then kind of looking forward, the consideration of keeping one lunch, and then kind of look at the duty schedule, look at all of the pieces to see how can we balance the duties, right? And then also continue to be thinking about the supervision throughout our day.
I think it would be important for us to hear from Megan.
Yeah, and then do questions?
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brian, can I just add real quick before I hand it to Megan, is that Megan and her staff have been great, and clearly they have had, this is much harder for them, it's more pain, less, so we feel like this is a net benefit for us. Fully wanted to thank and appreciate that for Megan. That is not the case. So, and we appreciate they've been good team members, and it hasn't been easy, and they're working super hard.
Thank you, Frank.
Do we want to ask any questions on the first presentation first, or do you want to hear from Megan?
Well, let's hear from Megan, and then
Okay.
we can, because I think
I'll,
there's going to be quite a few questions.
Be fairly brief.
Yep.
But this is an unusual situation because we're not used to necessarily be on different ends of the spectrum of a project. I will tell you, I am incredibly proud of my staff. They were nervous about it, they're still nervous about it, but they have worked the situation, and we have those big sticky pieces of paper all over my office with different menu configurations, different ideas to try and keep our numbers up. You do have a report in front of you that does go over that we did. I'll just skip right over to the second page where you can see some graphs. We did have a dip. We are coming back. January, we are about to our average when we were on 2 lunches, so we're doing around 240 to 250 a day. Pizza's up around 280, and by that I mean by reimbursable lunches. Doesn't include any a la carte sales, any extra sales. This is just what we get our federal monies from. And that's the easiest way to measure it, cleanest, simplest way. So, as one of my staff members said, we may have cracked the code, but is that really a good thing? It's a mixed bag. A lot of my staff are actually, they're missing the students. They've lost 50% of their student time by going to one lunch. And for several of them, it was a time to connect with kids, feel part of the community, and just have that one-on-one time. Now, when we are pumping kids through the line, and it really is a pumping through the line because I'm serving 9 days out of 10, I'm serving, and we are shoving them through, for lack of a better word, as quickly as we can, while still trying to smile and wish them have a good day, or the Susical was great, or when Ava got her 1,000 points, or we're trying to remember to do those things as well, because we know those are those things that keep students coming back because they feel comfortable. And with COVID, everything was free. We were this great place to be because you came down. It didn't matter if you didn't have any money. It's all good. Well, now we all have to worry about the money. So we're shoving you through the line and then saying, do you have your $350? You don't? Oh, well, they have charged. Bye. So it has been a real challenge for the staff, and I have to say their morale is not what it used to be. Because they miss the kids. They're putting out food, and we're having to change the menu because some items we have to prepare so early that when we get to service, it is not the item we want to put out. It's certainly good, don't take me wrong, but it doesn't look the way we want it to look. It's not the quality we want it to be. So that's been hard in itself. And the other piece that is worrisome for them is that we have a short period of time where we need lots of hands, but then we're done. So we do have extra in the current contracts and hours. If this continues into next year, there will be reductions in hours, but at the same time, I need to hire some more bodies on short shifts, probably like 3-hour shifts, so we can even possibly open up another serving area to try and move students through and get more students coming in. And it's a tricky balance, and I'm pretty honest with my staff. They all know this. Everything I'm sharing with you tonight, they all know. They're all concerned about what this might mean for their future. But they also understand that, we're food service and students are important, and making sure they're doing well is important. And, but I'm just kind of here to kind of plead their case a little bit. But it feels very weird to be doing this amongst colleagues, to say your great idea that's doing really good things up there on the power. For our department, it hasn't been the best experience. And I don't know what our department will look like going into next year in terms of hours, people, number of positions. And we have the added responsibility of being financially independent. I mean, we're fortunate that we have money in the bank so that we'll probably have a loss this year, so we'll be able to absorb it ourselves. And we keep that money so that we can absorb losses or make, equipment purchases. But we have a new contract also potentially coming in with some much-needed raises, which is wonderful. But we're also the only department that needs to figure out how to pay for those raises. And that's another, so it's a little interesting dynamic in our department. So, it's great to see that there are also these good things happening in the building. That's great, but with any business, there's lots of pieces that come in when you make a systemic change. So that's what I have to share.
All right, thank you, Megan. So I'm going to take questions for anybody, for the administration or Megan. So everybody just stay put. So who wants to start? Go ahead, Dan.
So, easy question to start with. Lunch is 30 minutes long. Is there a transition time before and after, or is it the bell rings, you have to get to the caf and get back to your next class in 30 minutes?
No, there's transition as well. So bell to bell, from the end of one class to the start of the next, it's closer to 35, 40 minutes? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And during the presentation, there was a lot of talk about supervision, supervision. Obviously, that is a concern. Otherwise, I wouldn't think it'd be up there. You mentioned that the teacher duties are now 1 day on, 1 day off.
It's always been the case. So in our schedule, with the block scheduling, it's by period. So
Yep.
fifth period there's a group of duty teachers that don't have a class, don't have a prep, so their duty is for period 5. So then on the next day, it's the 6th period. So it's
Yeah, not understanding all of that, and I'm hoping that the general public doesn't either, so I'm in the majority. What does that mean?
Yeah.
I mean, so.
So there's 8 periods in the school schedule.
But
Teacher, right?
4 on one day and 4 on the other
Yep.
day?
Yep.
Okay,
And over the course of the 8, teachers teach 5 periods. They
okay,
have a duty period.
yep,
And then they have a shared planning period with their department and a personal planning period. So the schedule builds, and if you're assigned to teach period 5,
which is at what time, before or after lunch?
it is,
Right now it's after.
after. So it used to be, when the schedule was built.
Oh, I don't
and
really
we
care
had
about the
2
used to
lunches.
anymore.
Well, this is how we get there though, right? So if
Okay.
we go back to when we built the schedule last spring,
Ah.
the lunch period was built into period 5 and period 6.
Got
It was
it.
a 2-hour block in the day
Yep.
where 90 minutes was class and 30 minutes was lunch. So that's how the teachers connected to those duties now are there.
Okay,
So if I don't have to, after lunch ends, go and teach period 5, I can do a lunch duty.
if you're not, so that you can have lunch on period 5 or
Yeah.
period 6, and that's all, period 5 and period 6 is now completely after lunch.
Yeah.
It doesn't include the 30 minutes, 40 minutes of lunch.
Yep.
Okay. So the teachers who can be supervising, are they actually walking the halls anymore, or?
Yes.
Yeah, so that was the piece I was mentioning. So for the duty, their duty is that the lunch portion is that half an hour that the whole building is at lunch. And then the additional half an hour is the after lunch time. So it's the helping with the transition back to class. It is checking doors, it's monitoring halls. And then, the additional 30 minutes of that time would be their
Okay.
lunch, their time.
So here's the hard question. So why is there a supervision problem?
So I wouldn't say it's a supervision problem. I would say that supervision is always something that we are thinking about and, wanting to make sure. So when I'm saying supervision, it's that piece that in a building with 1,000 students, we're never going to have one-to-one supervision.
Oh, no.
So, and this is not a new, like I said, it's not just lunch, right? So our building is open in the morning, as Lily said, and students come in for clubs or to meet with teachers or just because they get here early. That's always something we're thinking about. So in theory, there are students here and not as many teachers when the day, and the same thing at the end of the day, right? So.
And any of the transition points during the day, right? So the bell rings and 1,000 students pour into the hallway. And there's a lot of places to go, so.
And it's just that piece
Oh,
that
yeah.
we're constantly thinking about.
Okay.
So not necessarily thinking it's a problem, but something that we're thinking about in a building this size with the space that we have open.
Are you all set?
I have more questions, but I want to give the other
Give some
people
other people.
a chance.
Okay, I'll
and
come back to you.
around.
Go ahead, Ellen, I see your hand up.
Did I hear you say that teachers have 2 periods a day, not with children?
Not a day.
Over
the
2 days.
It
course of
sounded
2
like
days.
that's what you said.
No,
so-
over the course of 2 days. So we have 8 periods over 2 days.
Yeah,
And so over the 2 days, they'll teach 5. They'll have duty time. They have a planning period with their department and then their personal planning period. So they have 1 period a day for their planning and preparation.
1 period a day. Plus a duty. That's definitely not what I heard you say. But thank you for this information. I guess, Madam Chair, our meeting started an hour and a half ago.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just me, but we haven't even started our business.
I know, but this is something that we have
This,
to come up with a
I
decision tonight.
think,
These
make a decision about
presentations,
what?
whether we're keeping this lunch for for the rest of the school year and going into next year. And this
Okay.
was we knew tonight was going to be long because the last meetings we had to cut short.
Okay.
Does anybody have any other questions? Caroline?
I do echo some of the same concerns that Dan brought up about supervision, because when this was initially discussed in the fall about going from 2 lunches to 1 lunch, that is something we had expressed as a concern as the board of, kids seem like they're going to have kind of free range. And it was that, yes, kids can go outside, they can be in the hallways, they can be with their friends, they can be on benches. That's sort of what already happens, and it's manageable. They're respectful about it, and it's okay, which we were okay with. It sounds to me, and this is where my concern comes in, because the safety piece is huge, that there's more kids in classrooms than I had anticipated happening. And that makes me concerned, because I think the more that goes on and that the kids kind of learn, like, hey, this is our little group in a classroom and nobody's in here. Is it that nobody's in there, or am I wrong? Are they ever unstaffed?
I would say, are there times that teachers are in and out of the classrooms?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
But it is not that there are 65 empty classrooms full of students at all in the building. And I would say most of the classrooms that I see, there are adults in there interacting with the kids, having lunch with the kids, small groups of adults coming and going.
So it's not that for the full block, the full period of lunch, that the kids are just in a classroom alone?
No.
Okay. For the
Has that
whole
been your
time.
experience at all?
I don't think I've ever been in and I walk around a lot during lunch, and there's never been a time where I've walked into a classroom and there's just been a group of students alone. It's always either they're working on homework together and a teacher, pops in and they say, hey, I have a question. Or, they're like in there interacting, and you kind of are able to find your safe people. So if you are having a really anxiety-provoking day, you know that you're going to be able to go to a classroom with a trusted adult that may not be your teacher, but you still have that trusted adult in the building.
Okay.
Go ahead, Wendy.
So I'd also like to add, I think, thinking about supervision, one of the things that I've appreciated is if there's an administrator out or a school counselor that's out, the administration has figured out what the sweet spot is to make sure they have enough people in certain parts of the building that are supervising, that if someone's out, they call the SAU. Mr. McBride has called me, Dr. McMurray has called me and said, hey, we're short someone today, is it possible for you to come over? Mr. Balke is going over, Ms. McGrath, Mr. Gross, we are all willing to go over and help with this. And I like the fact that they care enough about supervision that they'll make that phone call so we can go over and provide assistance. So that's one of the things I thought I would mention to the board.
Thank you, Wendy. Go ahead, Shane.
Thank you. So I'm generally of the mindset of if it's good for kids, I'm for it. But I did hear Megan have concerns about her staff, and I think, Megan, I heard you say that you need more bodies, but you needed to reduce hours because of a lack of things to do after kind of the lunch period.
Correct.
So I guess my question is, and this is kind of to administration as well, is there a way that we can utilize the kitchen staff outside of just being kitchen staff? They're all on the GESS contract, if I'm not mistaken.
They are.
Yes, but funding is, would be the issue.
Right, because you're independently funding yourself.
Well, and if they're doing something that is non-food service related, that would be a cost to the district. It couldn't come out of, it would be an unallowable cost. And, if we're, because part of the length of people's contracts was because we had one lunch at 11 and then another one at, 12:30? So then we really weren't getting done serving lunch until 1, so then the kitchen closed at 2.
Yeah.
And that's how we started the year. And then now, we're done by 11:36, so, wrap up is about an hour, and we've shifted people's schedules so then they're in earlier to get the production done. But it's that end of the day where we find, and we're doing some things, we're helping out the middle school. They'll make food there, and then I truck it up there, and so we're being creative with the time, but we're being creative to get through this year.
Follow up, if I may?
Yeah, go ahead, Shane.
So you just kind of hit on where I was going to go. If this had been implemented at the beginning of a school year rather than the middle, could this have logistically worked out better? like, if we can get through this year with the pains that we're having, could we see next year with kind of more planning and more forethought, could it be better for you guys? Because I think it's good for the kids from what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
So I think it's something that we should probably look to move forward with. But if there was more planning and you had more time to kind of put a plan together, could you make it work better with your staff?
Potentially, because one of the things like we're holding off on getting is, like I was saying earlier, on pizza day, we're literally one pizza box away from not having enough warmers space. So we haven't purchased that. I mean, I have a line on one, it's about $6,000, but I haven't purchased it because if we don't stay this way, well, yeah, it'll be a beautiful warmer, top of the line, great, beautiful, and, we can move another one around to another building, but could we have used that money a different way? We've kind of held off on, finding some of the shorter shifted people because we don't want to hurt our existing staff, because they come to work and they want to be busy, they don't want to be sitting around twiddling their thumbs, and the kiosk, while it's great, it takes 2 people to roll stuff down, 2 people to roll it all back down in the kitchen. That's kind of a bummer, to be honest with you. So if we're really going to do a kiosk,
We need to
we need a
figure out
space.
storage and a dedicated space.
Yeah, because we used to have a space, it was right off, remember, I forget, Carol's in there now.
Yep.
We were there for a while, and it was great. We kept all of our stuff there, and we just brought the cashier, and it worked well. This, well, it's, we definitely have a certain population that loves the kiosk, and it's great. And, we know those students aren't going to truck down to the kitchen. We know that, and that's okay, because we're providing a service. But at the same time, the logistics behind it are a pain in the butt.
So as you can see, I'm trying to find a way to keep it, but also make it more manageable for your staff and make it so they feel valued and they feel like they're part of the school community and that their needs are also considered.
Yes.
Because obviously it's the whole school community. It's not, I work in a school, so I know how it is. It's
Yeah.
we're all a team. So I get it.
And
So
I
guess-
do appreciate the questions. They're good.
Thank you.
And I think those are the pieces we've talked here and there about, and that feeling right now of being a little bit of limbo, right, in terms of which direction are we going to move with this longer term, and then how do we start to really sort through on a long-term basis all of these pieces.
Are you all set, Shane?
Yes, thank you.
All right, thanks. Go ahead, Ginny.
To make sure they keep their hours, is it possible for the workers to do pre-food preparation after lunch hours for the next day? I mean, is that a way of extending the day?
We already do
for them?
that. Yeah. We already do that, but I can tell you, if we're at 1 o'clock and people are leaving, 1:30 or so, we're not going to want to mess up our kitchen and have to go through a whole clean and sanitize. It's a tricky balance, but we do already do some of that. So.
How many hours does it look like they would be missing if?
I honestly don't have that answer. We'll probably, we have one position that's currently open, which is a 5-hour, and that obviously will not be a 5-hour next year. So that one might lose 2. We might have another one that might lose 1. It really will depend upon the timing of the lunch too, if it stays at this time or if it moves later in the day, or, those things will all affect that.
How many hours did they gain in the morning from when they used to come in?
Folks are coming in about a half an hour earlier.
Only half an hour. Could that be stretched to make their day work a little bit easier than rushing around?
Well, the rush around is not necessarily early in the morning. It starts around 10 because we serve at 11. And so at 10 is when basically food needs to be cooked or started being cooked, prepped, plated, and then 11 o'clock hits. So it's like an hour and 15 minutes where it's really crunch and, we got to go kind of at crazy pace. But outside of that, it isn't necessarily that. We've got enough people in the morning. So, thank you, Jenny. Caroline, did I see your hand up?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Is this sustainable with increased enrollment? So if we're talking about just this year with 1,000 students, it looks like next year's enrollment will be up. And I think that based off of what we're seeing in the elementary schools and the middle schools, it has been higher. So is this even sustainable long-term? And what number do we have to hit where it really is not going to be sustainable?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different factors in that question. We've seen those enrollment numbers shift and be higher at the younger grades for a while now, and we have stayed pretty steady, ironically, where we are in that 1,000 to 1,100 student population. And I think there's so many factors in terms of continuing to reassess whether or not this is working. I think this is a moment in time where, for this school community and these students, it does seem to be a positive. But I think that anything could flip that switch. And I think part of how we landed here having this conversation is that we are constantly kind of looking at, reassessing, thinking about our practices and what's working, what's not, and what could we do better. Because it might not be 50 kids, it could be 5 kids in particular who tip the scales in one direction or the other, right? Like, if we're truly being honest in terms of what that 35-minute time period looks like, that makes us say, ooh, this isn't good for the school right now. So I wouldn't want to put a number so much on it.
Yeah.
But I would ask that, I hope you know, we are continually looking at and reflecting on and trying to refine.
Kim, if I could add to that one, for me, like the original thought for me came when we started the year and we looked at lunches, and it was like the disbursement that was created with COVID and kids eating everywhere. It was that disbursement that we were in the cafe. And it's like, wow, this cafe is empty enough that could we do one lunch? I mean, that's the original thought behind it, and it's the disbursement. But back to one of the points that you mentioned about kids in classrooms. Not every single second. There are sometimes you can walk by a class, there could be kids sitting in a classroom without adults. I would still say that I believe, my professional opinion, I still think it's safer. Kim and I were just talking about, a lot of our colleagues still wage the war of the lunchroom. And we kind of have that, but we really don't. Where schools just pack everyone into these spaces. And I would argue in some ways, I think that's way more risky and unsafe than having kids who might be, for a moment in time, adulting a little, 16 or 17 or 18-year-old kids. Many to most of them have adults in them, as Lila mentioned, but there are some times when kids are not physically with someone right there. But I think the disbursement has made for a better and safer community.
For me, the tipping point would be, because believe it or not, there is still talk of universal free meals at the federal level. We get free meals back, there's no way we're doing one lunch. Just letting you know. That's not happening.
Anything is possible.
In addition, a second kitchen.
Yeah. We'll be on the turf field.
Oh, go ahead, Scott. I didn't see your hand.
So, I work with Megan. We talk all the time, and obviously, food service program, I oversee that. And I've been over here, a lot, by the way. Been here a lot the last 2 weeks, and the culture, phenomenal. Like, it's just been awesome, meeting with a lot of the staff. Specifically with the food service issue and this, is that I looked at, my job is to look at, I think, 2 things. One is the financials piece. So as soon as we saw the numbers dip, kind of freaked out, okay? Because this school board has subsidized food service during COVID, and unless we're prepared to say increase prices at the high school to deal with that, so that freaked me out a little bit. Then we saw that, then Megan came in and she's like, Scott, like, this was like the second week of January. She's like, the numbers are rebounding. So I'm like, okay, maybe we need to keep going. Maybe we'll get back to more normalcy, okay? In seeing the actual, so that's one piece of it, the financial piece, and seeing if we can sustain that so we're not losing money. Then there's the labor piece. As every time that I've been in here, I've observed that period of time where the staff is there. And to me, the service piece of it, to me, it made me super nervous. I didn't think it was sustainable how at a breakneck speed. Like, it was just them like serving, like, and Megan is not exaggerating, like the speed in which they're giving these meals out. There is very little time, if none, to be like, oh, how's your day, Shane? No, it's like boom, next, boom, next, what do you want, boom, next. And that's going on for at least 30 minutes. And that part made me super nervous in terms of, can our kitchen staff work at that level of speed? And that starts at 10 o'clock, goes all the way to, because you're doing all that quick prep and everything, because you got to get these meals, like, as Megan said, you can't start something like just 2 hours early, because when it gets to be 11 o'clock, what that product looks like is completely different. So you're working really fast. So before, and I look at our other schools, Mountain View, Bartlett, like they're going at a normal speed, but here at the high school, it's called, Jared, right, double time, right? You are racing back to camp. Like, so it's not like it's a casual jog, you are sprinting. So they are sprinting for at least 30 minutes at a high speed. And then that period before that is another really good clip. And is it sustainable for these people? Will we be able to continue to retain people? I've got big doubts. Whether we're going to keep all 6 people that are there. That's one. Will we be able to attract people for a 3 or 4 hour shift, knowing that an hour and a half of that shift is a sprint? Don't know. And what concerns me is that all those things that were said, all accurate. I think that for the student piece, everything that was in that slideshow, yep, I would agree. I've talked to students. But what concerns me is we have a hard enough time getting food service workers and custodians now, even with hopefully a pay increase, and if the voters approve it. I just don't know if working at that speed for that half an hour to hour and a half is sustainable for the staff that we have, or the prospective staff. So that is my big concern. And everything else, I've seen it firsthand. I've seen kids talking and they like it, I believe we have less discipline issues. I believe all of that stuff. But it's just from the financial piece, will we land in a break even or profitability? Don't know, jury's out on that one. Also, I want to highlight, Megan is serving 9 out of 10 days. That is not acceptable to me. She's the food service director. Her job is not to serve meals. So she is artificially helping the financial costs. Another person needs to serve. Actually, 2 more people probably need to serve based upon this breakneck speed. So that will impact the financial piece. So again, my whole thing is yes on all the things that were said, but please be mindful of, are the labor issues sustainable right now and going into the future? I have big time reservations there. And the financials, I'm a little bit less worried about, but it could have financial implications. But for me, it's the labor issue which concerns me the most. I just don't know if it's sustainable.
All right, thank you, Scott. Retta, you had your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. So with the survey that was done with the students, I think there was a little less than 50% that responded, which is actually good for a survey, so those kinds of results are good. But I'm wondering, I think it was like 12 to 15% of the students felt like they couldn't get their lunch in that time, and I don't remember the numbers, but are there students that are choosing not to eat or going without just because they're not able to get through the line or whatever the reason might be? So I don't know the answer to that, but I'm just concerned about students not getting food halfway through.
I would say my observations are aligned with Mike's, that 95% of the days that I've gone down there, 12 to 15 minutes into the lunch period max, the line is gone.
Okay. So there's plenty of time.
Thank you, Retta.
Yes.
So I had a couple of questions, if everybody is good. I noticed we had 2 separate lunches, which would equal an hour. Why did we just go to a half hour? Why didn't we do like a 45-minute lunch, just to give these kids time to eat and digest without having to gobble and run. Is there a reason that we're not looking at increasing that time since we have it?
So the time would come out of current class time. So
Okay.
we weren't prepared in the fall to say, to make that ask. Could a realignment of the schedule and going from 90 minutes to 88 minutes in classes be something that as a group we discussed if we decided we wanted to continue to try this? Yes, that could be an option as well to expand that out a little bit. Our lunch, I would hypothesize, based on talking with other districts, is already one of the longest lunches in the state.
Really?
For 1,000 kids?
That seems.
Many school
That
lunches
seems
are
fast.
20 to 25 minutes.
Yes.
And Heather, I would
Yeah.
just add too,
Yeah.
as someone who's still, I'm working on it, I need to eat slower, I don't. As someone who's observed for a long, long time, kids eating, they eat quick.
Right.
Yeah.
They get
Not saying that's good, I'm just saying that was my
Puts it in.
observation, that, you know.
So I guess what I'm hearing from both sides is we need to come up with a compromise that helps Megan and her staff. I mean, her staff has been with this school for a long time. I would hate to burn them out. I would hate for them to quit. I know it's hard to find someone, especially for 3 hours. But I also see all the positive that it's happened, especially with the social and emotional, kids with anxiety, being, just all being together, supervision and all that stuff. I think some kind of compromise needs to help happen to move this forward, to really determine if this is something that we can sustain.
I had a staff.
What was that?
I had a staff member, part-time.
Yeah, they are
Mentioned
looking
that.
to possibly add more staff members. Go ahead, Dan.
Remember, we're going to circle back
Yep,
to me.
right.
So this is for Heather. No, not for Heather, sorry, for Megan.
It's like, what?
Yeah, well, you have the, you had mentioned that you had another place in the school that was dedicated to you where you could leave your equipment and get things done.
Oh, the kiosk piece, yes.
I'm not sure what it is, but
Yes.
someplace that was yours.
Yes.
If you had that again, would the hyperactivity in the cafeteria, do you believe that would simmer down a little bit?
It might. I think what's going to affect that fast serve piece will be if I can have enough bodies to open up our snack shack and serve our hot food out of there, and then I have 3 hot lines instead of 2. I think that will be the biggest thing. The kiosk piece being a permanent piece, that will make it easier in terms of, dragging carts and things down. If we can just leave some stuff there, but it has to be secure, obviously, but leave a bunch of snacks and, that way it's one less thing we have to, trundle down there.
Let's go to the hot food in the snack shack, because that's really where I was going.
Okay.
What would it take you to get hot food in the snack shack? Bodies?
Yes. I have the food.
Do you need us to do anything to provide you the authority to get bodies?
Well, tonight was kind of that, if you will, because I needed to know kind of where we're going.
Okay.
If this is going to stay, do I put any resources in it? Because, I want, we do have the excess funds that we've planned out and are planning to spend on equipment, and, do I spend that equipment money here or there? So, because I do actually have some applicants, I don't know if they'll work for 3 hours, but it's always worth an ask.
So my question would be, if you had both the hot food in the snack shack and a place where you didn't have to keep rolling the carts back and forth, would that be helpful?
Yes.
Then I would ask administration, what would it take to allow Megan to have that location that could be called hers? What do we need to do to make that happen? What kind of gyrations?
Yeah, so right now, the space that, if we could find a place to store the risers that are tucked in the theater lobby, that little cutout space, if we could remove those and put in
even kind of a locked,
Like cage piece. We've
piece.
already,
There's a lot of space there if those risers aren't there. The challenge is, where do the risers go?
It's a dominoes.
Yeah, exactly.
I've been trying for 20 years to get rid of the riser.
I'm trying to help. Yes.
Okay, I'm looking for that compromise, and we may have gotten close.
Yep.
Yes.
All right, Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just, it's rare for us to be divided. So this is an unusual occurrence, and one that I would have liked to have found a way to avoid. However, be that as it may, at this point, I think it would be unwise to go back to 2 lunches for the remainder of the year. So my recommendation would be, we continue with this for the remainder of the year. I was a very reluctant, hesitant person to change things mid-year. Mid-year changes don't work. It's too many moving parts, too many variables. But what I'd like to do is, to Dan's questions, they want to keep this. So they want to keep it. They're going to the high school administration is going to find a way to help Megan with her kiosk, with moving equipment, with, I have every confidence that we can figure that out. What I'd like to propose to the board is, let's, and by the way, a month ago, Megan and Scott were kind of okay with this, and this is more of a recent development. So this has been in the last few weeks that her staff is, I think, overburdened. They're struggling, but I'd like to give us the opportunity to go back and see if we can address some of these concerns. And then, at the end of the day, if this isn't working for food services, I'm going to recommend we go back to 2 lunches. I can't have a school with 1,000 kids without having a kitchen and having staff to be able to feed these kids. So what I'd like to say is, I think we continue with this model for now, give us the opportunity to circle back and try to come up with some better, longer-term solutions. I agree with Scott, Megan shouldn't be serving. Megan has so many other administrative responsibilities. We need to get her the staff that she needs so that she doesn't feel that burden on herself.
Did you have something?
Yeah, I agree, and I think we should do, Megan said that she had some applications. I think that you should go ahead and hire at least 1 or 2 people, just to make it work and the people are not working crazy. And I would also say that maybe she could be creative in either offering education or something in keeping everybody's hours where they should be, so that people are not losing money, but are doing something that's valuable to food service.
And it's manageable.
Whatever that might be, so that people are not losing hours this year.
No one's
And-
losing hours this year.
No one, it's
No
all
one
in the
is this
contract.
year.
No, this is
Okay.
here.
It would be
And
next
that's,
year.
Scott
Okay.
and I, when this started, we both committed that, nope, nobody loses
Right, okay, good.
anything this
good.
year.
I misunderstood.
Sorry about that.
So I would say hire, look through your applications and hire those people that you have and make it work.
So is the board in agreement with that, and then get an update, usually come back towards the end of the school year for updates, Megan, with
We
money
should-
and stuff?
This should be decided prior to contracts. Kate, when do we issue contracts?
It'll be
May.
Okay.
Before May.
So we're in February.
Yeah.
Okay, so that might be
That's-
tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ellen?
Yeah, I'd like to move that we continue with the current lunch program at the high school, and that the administration and school service folks work to resolve a couple of issues that have arisen, and then come back to us in an appropriate time frame for future decisions.
Okay, thank you, Alan. Go ahead, Shane.
I'll second that.
Okay.
But also, so I guess my final question is do we think we can determine if this is going to work or not by April vacation?
I don't know, that'd be up to you guys.
I hear Megan saying we want to do it before contracts for next year.
Yeah.
Can we kind of make a decision by April break? Because I think that gives enough time to, if we're going to move forward with this, then we have time to plan.
Right. Yeah, we need a deadline.
We shouldn't be going to June with this kind of in limbo, especially with
Right,
contracts and things
no,
like that.
Definitely. So do you think that works for you guys? Okay. Yeah. All right, so we have a motion.
Yeah,
we
I
have a
think
s-
now that we know that if we can resolve some of these pieces
Mm-hmm.
and look at what can we do to make this more amenable long-term for everybody, that puts us in a different place, because it's been a lot of, well, what ifs and could we, and, yeah.
Because I agree with Brian, I would not be in favor of switching back again
No.
this year. That's way
No,
too
but
much.
we need to iron this out.
Yeah.
So.
Just one comment.
Yeah.
We're here for what's best for kids, and we've heard that this is best for kids. So we, in my opinion, we need to make this work.
Right, but we also need to think about our staff, because if we have no staff.
Didn't say we shouldn't, but we need to make this
That's why
work.
we're compromising. All right, so we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining? We're unanimous. Thank you all very much for coming out tonight. Appreciate it. You can go home.
And don't forget, Susicle this weekend.
Yes,
Friday
this
night,
weekend.
Saturday,
Yes.
2 and 7.
Absolutely. All right, so we'll move on to our regular meeting. Next is approving the school board minutes from February 6th. Everybody have a chance to read them? Anybody
Move to approve.
see anything?
Second.
Okay, Ellen made the motion, Ginny seconded. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, we're unanimous, but Dan's not here. Did you get that, Jane? Or Denise? All right, committee reports, A and F.
Sure, tonight you have a manifest in front of you in the amount of $1,463,080.71. Your payroll taxes and benefits are slightly over $871,000. Special education activity is mostly special ed transportation, and then, as we have seen over the last many manifests, out-of-district placements and contracted services. We do have a new contracted service provider, Miracle Farm Speech, so you might be seeing that in subsequent meetings. General expenses, you'll note the first one is Field Turf USA. This is the first payment that we are making on the Goffstown Field renovation project. And again, $1 million of that is grant funded. We're getting a $500,000 donation, and then we're using impact fees as well. I advised A&F tonight that I expect the $250,000 donation of securities that's going to probably hit this week. I talked to the donor, and he's advising his financial advisor to make that securities transfer this week. Other than that, let me go through this. In case some on the board might not know, we do pay for testing, state testing, so it's the PSATs. All the students take that in, Brian, what grade is that? Ninth grade?
Ninth and 10th.
Okay, ninth and 10th. The other one that you might not see all the time is St. Anselm College. We do rent space from St. Anselm College. This one is for ice time at Sullivan Arena. Performance food service, a little over $23,000 in food and commodities, and then thermo store. And Megan, I think was that the compressor units, or am I wrong on that?
That
Yep.
was half of it.
And that was, so that's at Goffstown High School. So we've had issues with some of our refrigeration and freezers, and they were getting older, and we've had to make repairs to those units. And are there any questions from the committee, from the board?
Anyone? Yeah, we didn't get a motion, but does anybody have any questions for Scott? All right, seeing none, so I'll take a motion to
Move to
approve.
approve manifest, $1,463,084.71.
Thank you, Alan. Do I have a second? Second. By Caroline. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining? Okay, we're unanimous.
So next thing, and my apologies to Caroline and Heather, I totally forgot, I spaced it out, but I put in your packets for the full board a budget transfer, which you all should have. And this is more housekeeping in the sense that we moved monies for paraprofessionals from Goffstown High School to the kindergarten. And we did this I think this was way earlier in the year because we had a greater need at Glen Lake. This is just more of a housekeeping thing where I need to transfer the budget that is currently at GHS to the to Glen Lake Kindergarten. And again, it's para, so it's the same job function. So I would just need a a motion to approve budget transfer GBT 34 that's been presented.
All right, thanks, Scott. Go ahead, Ellen.
Well, I'm happy to make the motion.
Okay.
Okay, and then I have one really quick question.
Sure. Ask your question.
Oh, okay. This was not part of the changes that we did earlier this year?
It's part of the staffing changes that we have done. You know, we've had to move paras in
Right,
between
but
different
this
buildings.
wasn't in there. This is something
When you say
additional.
this wasn't in there, not from a budgetary perspective, you've made it from a human, you know, from a
Right.
staffing, we
Okay.
have done this, yeah, but not
Okay.
from a budget. So now this is just aligning that, because I'm
Okay.
seeing negatives in these para lines, so I have to,
Okay, I'll move to approve the amendment as presented.
Second.
Okay.
I mean, you mentioned the budget transfer,
The budget
right?
transfer.
Budget
yeah.
transfer.
Okay.
Oh,
All
it
right.
says amendment at the top.
Denise, did you get that? All right, so Ellen made the motion, Shane made a second. Any further discussion?
Yeah, just one. Is
Yeah,
it
go ahead,
one or
Dan.
both of them? Is it the 70,000 or the 21,060, or, because there's a page 2 on here.
Yeah, that's the first one, right? And I'm gonna talk about the next one.
The
Thank
first
you.
one
You're going to do them
is,
separately.
I'm gonna do them separate.
which one is the first one?
The first one is the first page, which is
70,000.
The
70,000.
70,000.
Right, and then,
Just to
and then once
kindergarten.
that's done, then I'll do
Right,
the
then we
other
go
one.
on to the second. Okay. All right. So we have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, we're unanimous. So now we
So,
go to the second.
On page
transfer.
2, which is GBT 36, again, this is something that you've been briefed on before, so we've had a difficult time hiring custodians, and we've had to use an outside vendor called Citywide, and what this is doing is this is transferring $21,060 from the custodial salary line to the contracted services line, again, just to make sure that it's in the appropriate budget code.
Move to approve the, okay, it says amendment at the top.
Those
What
be-
do you want me to use?
Budget transfer GBT 36.
Okay. Move to approve that.
Did you get that, Denise? All right, do I have a second?
I'll second.
By Shane. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, we're unanimous. Are you set, Scott?
Yeah, I just want to, again, I want to just brief the board on just a couple of things. With regard to the renovation project, if you've been back there, if you haven't, significant progress has been made. All the topsoils have been removed. The tower for GTV has been also removed. I wanted to let the board know that we have a very, very tight budget for this particular project, and we received donations of labor and/or services. So Roger Dignard of Dignard Architectural, he is a New Boston resident who we've worked with on a few projects. He has donated his time for the complete design of that press box addition. Neville Excavating has donated at least half of the time needed to remove the tower and to do the earthwork for the slab. And On Point Concrete is donating all of their labor, so they will only be charging us for the cost of the concrete and rebar. So we do have 3 entities that have done. There is no need for public hearings, there's no money being transferred, it's just, these are donations of labor, but I wanted the board to know. Lastly, I discussed with A&F this evening that this construction is moving a bit faster due to the warmer weather. And so Roger Dignard, the architect, has done all of the design work on the foundation, and obviously he was able to give it to Neville Excavating, so they've done that work. He is working this week to finish up the plans for the press box itself. Ordinarily, this project would need an RFP type process, meaning that we do design, it goes out to bid, public, all that. I am requesting from the board to not go through the RFP process, but to go next level below where we get 2 to 3 bids. So I know that we have contractors who can bid on this. One of the contractors said that he is going to do it at a cost that no one is going to beat because his children will be using that field, and he wants to be able to say that his company built it, which is very nice. I have to do my due diligence as your business administrator to get additional quotes to make sure that his statement is accurate. That being the case, we do use certain contractors for work in our schools. I feel confident that I can get Mr. Dignard's plans, give them to different contractors in the community and have them bid on it, and then be able to make that determination as to whether that gentleman is accurate accurate. But again, going through an RFP process might take a lot longer. Also, if we can resolve this within, say, 2 to 3 weeks, we can purchase materials now, which we believe will be advantageous to us because the prices of these materials go up when you start construction in the spring. So again, it's, as Dan stated, it's not a complete departure from our purchasing policy. It's just going one notch down where we're still showing the public transparency that we got bids, but we're just not going through that super official process. Dan, does that kind of capture what you thought, or?
It does, and I think Caroline has the wording for the motion.
Yeah, but Ellen had her hand up first, so hang on a second. Go ahead, Ellen.
Like Caroline.
Were you going to do the motion?
I was going, my motion was going to be to please send
Okay.
thank yous to these donators. So-
Okay. All right, so does anybody have any questions for Scott before I take a motion? Okay, go ahead, Caroline.
So I motion to waive the traditional RFP process and accept 2 to 3 competitive bids for the press box project.
Pursuant to
Our purchasing policy.
Pursuant to our
Purchasing policy.
purchasing policy. Thank you.
Second.
Good job, Caroline. And Ellen, second. All right, any further discussion? Go ahead, Jared.
As part of the meeting minutes, can we actually have the policy that we're waiving?
The name of the policy?
Yes, please.
Yes, good idea.
DFB, I think, but I'll check. Can we add to the minutes, if that's okay?
I'm okay, as long as it's added
the
to the
policy
minutes,
is
I'm
in
okay
it.
Let's
with that.
designate and you mentioned it's the 50, anything expected to be 50,000 or more.
50,000 or more.
Right, this may not come in at 50,000 because of but we don't know.
Right.
So RFP process would take quite a bit of time to do, so.
I don't disagree with the actions that are taken. I just want to make sure that we're naming the policies that we may be
Agreed.
waiving
Right.
as part of this.
You're going to amend the motion to include that?
I didn't make the motion.
Caroline?
Caroline made the motion.
Sorry.
Is it okay to include the policy
name of
that
the
we're
policy.
waiving in the motion?
And
Yes.
Ellen, do you
Yes.
second her amendment? Okay.
DJB.
DJB.
B.
All right. Did you get that, Denise? All right, thank you. So we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining?
And then
we're
the last thing that
unanimous.
A&F discussed was that we are working with a consulting firm right now, Laura and I, Randy and Dawn, on our electricity supplier. Our contract expires in November, and we're working with an energy consultant who pretty much competitively bids our electricity supply needs with other school districts and municipalities, kind of like a consortium. This particular entity does this for a lot of other school districts, and they not only do electricity, but they also do propane and fuel oil. So, last year, if you recall, I was keeping track of propane over the whole summer. These companies, you do pay a fee, which is about $3,000 a year, but they will do all of that tracking for you. When is the right time to buy? They offer also going out to bid. They do all of that, but they do it in a consortium type of endeavor. So more details to follow on that. Laura, Randy, and Dawn, we met this morning, and we will continue to meet. But I do want to let you know that we are looking at these types of entities who are going to lump us together with other school districts and municipalities. There is a cost to that, but we firmly believe that our savings will way exceed what that cost is. And now also these folks they deal with these commodities daily. They know the trends way better than we do. So that was just more informational that I wanted to share, and that was.
Are you all
it.
set?
Yep.
Great, thanks, Scott. Go ahead, Ellen.
Just real quick, I don't even know if, I'll say it. I'd like to request that the board formally thank those who made donations for the field that was
Absolutely.
listed before.
Yeah.
So,
I will
because we're
always,
really-
yeah, I always do that.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
that's definitely being done. All right, Budget Committee, Jared.
No budget meetings are on the books. However, I do want to let this board know, with House Bill 123, the specific language of it would remove us as a voting entity on the Budget Committee, as it's currently read. Not only us, but also the Select Board and Water Precincts would be removed And we'd be advisory members only with no voting rights.
Non-elected members is
Correct.
how the bill.
It would only be the 12 representatives on the budget committee that would be voting. And we would, of course, still be present, but we wouldn't be voting members.
You would have no vote.
But that, I wanted to at least bring to this board, it might jigger some things on how we proceed in the future.
Okay, thank you, Jared. All right, PNC, Retta.
Yes, PNC met tonight, and we actually had a packed agenda, didn't get through all of it, which is the first time in a long time. We're usually quite efficient, but we did have Stephen Bourget come and talk to us about the website. This has been something that we've talked kind of superficially over the last few months, but just getting a sense of what's happening, what's possible with the website. And Stephen shared a lot of information about this particular website, and it has, as you can imagine, a website is a big project, and it's fallen on the plate of the IT director, where it usually falls on the plate of a website master. So it's something we had a lot of good conversation around it. There's technical things that we're going to have to do to update it. No decisions were made tonight. We shared some basic feedback, and we want to continue to look at this over the next several months in what's possible. Also pairing it with other updates that are going to happen. Brian also brought up a recommendation to consider adding in some apps that a lot of people are using to get information, and those tend to be coupled with the web hosting service. So we will continue to look at this and work with Stephen and think about how the best way to proceed in the future. So that took up a lot of time, good discussion. So we'll keep this on our agenda for the next several months. Also, we are looking at inviting the general court to come to the school board meeting. We've done that in the past with legislators and senators. Senator Keith Murphy is new to us. So this would be an opportunity to bring them in and perhaps talk about some of the things that are happening up at the State House that affect the schools, to keep us updated on what's happening. And Brian, I don't know if you'll be talking about that later, or if everybody's okay with that, he's going to just move forward with the invitation to bring them to this meeting. So it's just a quick update. There's also two opportunities for kind of under the title of communications for us to be thinking about. One is more immediate. Last year we talked a little bit about the Spring Fest, which happens in April, and this is where a lot of businesses and community organizations, town offices have tables and present. We did not present last year, but we're bringing it back. Other town offices are participating, and we thought this would be a great opportunity to have the school board have a table. And if we're in favor of that, then I believe, Scott, you need to commit to.
I need to let the gentleman know. It's the it's the Boy Scouts of Goffstown that are kind of putting it on. But I need to let him know if the board or district wants to have a presence.
April 1st, yes. Scott, was that the date?
Huh?
April 1st.
April 1st is the actual date. Saturday, April 1st is the Spring Fest date. But I need to let him know kind of like this week if we want to have a booth.
And our thought is we would have, we don't have to decide it this evening, but we'd have shifts where different people could take shifts of being there at the table and provide information. So it's mostly exposure and answering any questions that people might have.
Do you need a motion?
I think we just need a consensus. What does everybody think about? Because you have to let them know this week.
Yeah.
Everybody good with having a table at the Springfest? I think it'd be good.
That was a good idea.
You could.
Yeah, it's a very good idea.
I'm unavailable on Saturdays to do that.
Okay.
It's tax season.
I'll be
Oh, yes. So do we have a shake of heads, mostly yes? Okay, all right, go
Great.
ahead.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Will do.
And then one other item, there is, you may or may not have heard of this organization. It's called the New Hampshire School Funding Fairness Project. So they have been working on doing presentations to different communities, different school boards, on just how education is funded in New Hampshire. And this, or not. And one of the things, and I think even going to the deliberative, there's a lot of people, understandably, do not understand how schools are funded. They have several webinars that are being put out there, and I went to one last week, and it's short, but it is very clear on describing how schools are funded, and New Hampshire is somewhat unique in how that funding happens. So I wanted to, again, bring it to the board to see if this is something that we might be interested in essentially just hosting. They do the presentation. It could be a webinar, or it could be face-to-face, depending on what we want. But
It's a good idea.
It's
a good idea.
Just getting education out there so they know how it happens.
We can publicize it and let people know they can come or watch, or, it's a good idea. Do you have a time, or?
No, we just talked about the idea and thought this might be something that we want to pursue, and if it is, then we can look further into it and see what arrangements need to be made.
I think look further into it.
Who is this by?
It's called the New Hampshire Funding Fairness Project.
Fairness Project, you hear?
Yeah, well, the first thing that comes to mind is, I always think about this, I say, is this a political active type of thing, or is it factual, or are they going to be?
It's nonpartisan, it's very factual. There are lawyers, it's based on data. You'll love all
Oh, yeah,
the
I mean,
graphs.
facts are facts, and that's what we try to do.
Right.
If there's an inflection that we tend to do sometimes, I'm sorry, Brian, but the way you had reacted is the way I don't want to do it.
Right.
Even though we may feel that way, I don't want to put the perception we are trying to do something in one direction or another.
Right. And you can certainly go take a look at the website, and they have a lot of information about who the board is
Sure.
and the types of.
And it's not the people, it's the presentation. If that's the way it is, then why not? I mean, let's get facts out, and that's okay.
Okay.
It is what it is.
I've seen the presentations before. They are well done, and they're, at least the presentation that I had seen was very nonpartisan. And as I think you all know, I think that the way we fund education in the state is incredibly inappropriate. I think that the state does not meet their constitutional obligation. I'm not shy about my opinion on this topic because it continues to hurt us at the local level. But if the board would like, I'd be happy to reach out to them and inquire if they have availability. I think we would probably try to get them maybe on a regular board night as opposed to another night out. But I would defer to what the board would wish.
Yeah. How long a presentation is it?
The whole presentation was an hour. I mean, the presentation was 30 minutes, and then it was Q&A at the end. And this one was designed for school board members or aspiring school board members just to understand how it works.
Could it be something for a retreat?
It could be something for the retreat. It could, I'm thinking more for the general public to understand, especially when they're looking at, why do they pay taxes? Where's that money going?
So at a board meeting where it's already on TV.
Would be better.
Great. Okay. Great.
It almost seems, did we hear the New Hampshire School Boards Association had a similar type of seminar? I remember reading about it.
They did have one. I wasn't able to attend that, and I think it was a summary of the governor's budget. I think that's what that. There's a lot right now. There's all sorts of things coming out, and I think it comes to us as being school board members, but I think getting some of that information out to the public so they understand, why they have to pay taxes, why. they know why they have to pay taxes, but to pay for schools, to know what we can and can't do. I think all of that information is good for them to know.
So are you all set?
So as I said, there's lots of other agenda items we didn't get to, including, there was some conversation around having a legislative committee that we talked about back at the retreat. So we will be tackling all of those other agenda items when we meet next on March 6th.
March 6th? Okay. At 6:15?
At 6:15.
Okay. All right, thank you, Retta. All right, policy review, we met last week, and as you see later in the agenda, there are second reads and first reads. We have a meeting March 13th at 5:30 at the SAU. Ginny, see any?
Yes. Our committee met on February 13th, and Dr. Athena Chisholm and Principal Kathy Stoyle gave a presentation on their kindergarten findings. I believe you all received a packet of information on that meeting, and we felt this was important information, and so instead of just getting the brief summary of it, we felt it would benefit you all to get a full presentation, which will be given to you at the April 17th meeting. And our next meeting is on March 13th at 7 p.m. at the SAU.
All right, thank you. All right, SAU board meeting, we're looking at April 19th at 6 o'clock, so please let Denise know if that works for you. Bye, guys. Yeah, no, it's getting late. Bye,
a
Lily. Have a
Wednesday.
good week.
IVP Lang in the morning.
Yeah, no, good, go home. SAU policy, Shane?
So we were supposed to meet last Wednesday, but we determined that with the few policies left to kind of comb through, we could actually just meet prior to the next SAU meeting. So whenever the next, if we plan on April 19th for the next SAU meeting, we will meet as a policy review committee at 5:30, right? Regular meeting will be at 6, we'll meet at 5:30.
Okay.
That's enough time, Denise? Okay.
All right, thank you, Shane.
Thank
All
you.
right, Superintendent report, that's you.
I'll try to be brief, just recognizing the time. So we mentioned that Bartlett will be coming over here for the musical, and the students are going to be able to see that. While the students are here, we're going to use that as an opportunity to practice our reunification drill. Because I have 200 kids coming over here, we're going to use that opportunistically to do a little practicing of our emergency operations plan. We held a faculty meeting with Goffstown High School faculty last week. Mrs. Kohler and I came over, and we had really fruitful discussions about one-to-one device educational programming. So nothing more to highlight at this point, but I wanted the board to be aware, and I would call this kind of a preliminary conversation, and we can talk more about this in the future. There's a sign right down at the bottom of the stairs that Mrs. Lewis has put up for the future-focused Friday sessions that they've been hosting. The most recent one had an overview of cosmetology, careers in cosmetology, and programming that's available at the Manchester School of Technology. The governor announced last week that there is $100 million more being put into building aid. So a new formula is going to be targeted towards property-poor towns. At this point, there's a lot we don't know about the remarks that the governor had, but there is one thing that delights me considerably, and that is an increase in adequacy, base adequacy, from $3,800 to $4,700. So that's a $900 per pupil increase in adequacy. That will help our local property taxes. We anticipate that. So at this point, we see that as a very good step in the right direction. $4,700, of course, does not come close to covering the cost of educating a child, which we know in the state of New Hampshire to be around $16,000. Retta mentioned inviting the members of the general court in May. We will move forward with that. I want to let you know at Glen Lake School, we have started a program that we did pre-COVID, and it's Positive Solutions for Families workshop series. And we have 10 families that signed up for a free 6-week session. It goes one night a week for 2 hours. Childcare and dinner are provided, and 2 of our great teachers, Jillian Purcell and Carol Donovan, are facilitating the group, and this is the first time we've done this since 2020. I wanted to let Lily know.
Yeah.
She's gone. We've been working with the New Hampshire School Board Association, and we're creating a student rep group. So in our South Central region, we have, most of our school districts have a student rep on the school board, and we're going to be getting them together and doing some workshops and some networking with them. And specifically, we are looking at Saturday, April 8th, in the morning as the date that we are going to be moving forward with. And the School Boards Association likes this idea so much that they're planning to adopt it next year. And we're going to host an information session for our students in the fall, almost like an orientation, and then a second session in the spring. So it'll be very similar to the delegate assembly that the New Hampshire School Boards Association does for board members. And lastly, we have finally received Manchester's calendar. So we are in the last stages of evaluating how we need to align with Bedford and Manchester, and we hope to be bringing the calendar to your second meeting in March. I will share that will be later than we normally do, and the calendar is due to the state by April. So this new requirement of having these calendars aligned has created a little bit of a challenge for us, but we expect to be working through that. And I'll stop there.
Do you know if they have President's Day off?
I believe they do not have President's Day off. I think the only holiday that Manchester had that we didn't have is Juneteenth.
Manchester
Oh,
does
good
have President's Day off.
They do have, okay, so it looks like there's a couple of days.
They did not work today.
And so it's also Bedford, it's also Londonderry, so there's kind of a lot that we have to figure out in a short amount of time.
All right, you all set?
I am, thank you.
All right, thank you, Brian. All right, second read. So as you can see, there is a whole list of them, and we've done questions and answers. We've read through them, so how
need a
can,
motion?
we need to make motions for all of them and pass them through. Because it's late, can we do them as one lump sum? Is anybody opposed to that?
Yeah.
Okay, so you want to do one at a time? All right, then
I
let's.
think it's important that, just because of time, that we don't skip what we should be doing, is looking at them individually.
Well, everybody should have, at this point, looked at them individually. So if we want to do it one at a time, then let's go so we can, because there's 11 of them.
11?
Yes, for second reads.
That's what the wrong.
All right, so the
group
first
decided.
policy is DO, a fund balance,
Move to approve policy DO.
by Ellen. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
By Caroline. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, we're unanimous. Next policy is EF, food service management, and EFR. So this-
Hold on. In
Oh.
speaking with Megan, we'd like to pull EFR because there was an issue that Megan found. It's not huge, but.
Okay, so it has to go back to policy?
Nope.
Well, no,
I think
it's
it
just a
can come back
regulation.
for a second reason. It's a very minor
Okay.
thing.
Well,
So-
we
We can approve the
yeah,
policy.
we can
change it
address
right
it
now.
tonight.
Yeah,
Okay,
where's the
Megan.
change?
Here you go.
Hi.
Hi.
There's one piece in here that isn't clear.
Okay, are we looking at EF or EFR?
EFR.
EFR, what
If
page?
you look, page 1, under parent guardian restrictions,
Okay.
there's the second sentence, and it says, unless restricted by the parent, guardians, or school, a student may purchase a la carte items in addition to the regular meal choices. That's correct.
Okay.
But I am recommending that you add a sentence that a la carte items may be purchased if the account is positive, that they are not allowed to charge a la carte. We've never allowed them to do that.
If they have a negative
Correct.
balance.
Because if
Okay.
you do not put that in and it's silent to it, I'm afraid parents are going to expect that I can charge 17 waters and 16 bags of chips.
Right,
And
this
then
is
we have-
only the à la carte.
Correct.
So a la
Not-
carte may be provided.
So tell us again the sentence and exactly where, Meg?
It should go in
should go
probably the
right
third sentence in.
Here.
Right after choices?
Yeah.
Right after choices. And something as simple as students will not be allowed to charge a la carte purchases.
If a negative balance.
If in the negative.
Without a positive balance
Without.
available, because they could have 10 cents available, and if they don't have enough funds, so we would word it similar to without available funds in their account.
Correct, yes.
Okay, students will not be able to charge.
Students will not be able to charge à la carte items without
a positive,
Without
Without
available
without the available funds, without the sufficient funds.
without available funds.
in their account,
Okay.
right? Is that what we?
I believe so. What's your thought?
If I may, I think it would be easier because we're saying, or schools, we could add a sentence say, schools will not allow à la carte purchases unless if they're covered by accounts or something along those lines.
Unless there are sufficient funds in the account.
It says the same thing.
I mean, because we're just saying unless restricted by the school won't allow these funds without there being money for them.
It's the next sentence, right?
I don't think personally we need it because we're saying if the school doesn't allow it, which we wouldn't, they can't do it. That's my opinion.
By parents, guardians, or school.
Exactly.
So it's covered.
I think it is covered because we're saying the school won't allow it.
But Megan doesn't think it's clear.
No, I
Right.
think parents are going to read that and assume that they don't have to have a positive balance to
Right,
purchase
so
à
you
la
just want
carte.
to clean it up a little.
It just makes it clearer, because you will have parents who are like, wait a second, it doesn't say that, and she's the one that gets these calls, so.
All right, so Denise, do you want to read back what you have and see if this covers everything for you, Megan?
Students will not be allowed to charge à la carte items without available funds in their account.
Does that work?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. So if everybody's good with that verbiage, then we can approve EF and EFR as
I move to
amended.
approve policy EF and its regulation
Yep.
as amended.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
By Jenny. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining? Okay, we're unanimous. Bye, Megan, thank you. Next one is
Thanks,
EHAB, Data Governance and Security.
Motion to approve policy EHAB as presented.
By Shane, do I have a second? Second. By Caroline. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining? Okay, we're unanimous. Next one is GBEF and GBEFR, Goffstown School District Networks and Internet Access for Staff.
Motion to approve policy GBEF and regulation GBEFR as presented.
By Shane, do I have a second? Caroline?
Oh,
Oh,
hold on.
oh, Stephen but did
boy.
Caroline, did you second?
Yes.
Okay, all right, go ahead, Stephen.
Can I make a request?
Sure.
Can we break the permission form off of GBEFR and off of JICL, which is the last page of the policy? The reason I'm asking is every time the board revises the policy, we then send it out and spend the next 2 years chasing permission slips. And it would, because the version of the policy is stated on the permission slip itself. It's not as big a deal with the staff GBF policy, but for students, chasing parent permission slips, and then later on, after waiting a year and a half, cutting their access off to systems because their parents have not granted them permission to our systems, may not be the best for students.
Is he suggesting we not require?
No, Ellen, I'm asking the permission slip not be part of the regulation and be separate, so that way when the regulation changes, we don't have to send home a new permission slip, have the parent sign it every
So
time the
permission
board changes
slip
it.
You would want on the policy.
I would like it pulled off of the policy and be separate, so it would be referenced saying that we collect permission, but it's not physically part of the reg.
Okay, so if the reg changes, you have to get a new permission.
Right now, when the reg changes, I have to get a new permission. We spend on average 2 years chasing permissions every time the reg changes. And we've changed the reg, if you look at them, every couple of years.
So should this go back to policy because we're going to have to pull that off? and
Yeah,
approve
I think
basically-
We have some verbiage that replaces it.
Then where do we
let's do
put
that.
it? It's here for a reason.
Yeah, I think we need to look into that more.
Okay.
Is
Do
that?
we need to
Yeah, I would send it back to
I withdraw my
All right.
motion.
All right,
Well-
go
Oh, there's a
ahead.
second
We
already,
can
wasn't there?
approve
There's
the
a second.
policy and not the
Nope.
No,
regulation.
not if we're taking stuff out. Jared, did you have something?
Well, I don't think that we can unallow it since the motion's there. We either have to
Right,
vote
we have
no
to
or
vote.
table it, so.
Right. No motion,
minute.
oh, right,
There's
because
a motion.
Shane,
'Cause I
yeah,
motioned.
Shane and
Motion and
Caroline
motion had been
motioned
made.
Right.
for
Yeah.
GBF. What did you have to say?
If this is going back, I'd also like to recommend on page 3 of 7,
Which, on the reg or the?
on the reg,
Okay,
item number 1, E. The
E?
1E.
Yep.
So the sentence reads, users may not create material that is, and if you go to E, that is violates another's intellectual property. I think you need to go back to that is in violation of
Right.
another's intellectual.
Oh, yeah, and it was there and it got crossed out.
So just correct that too.
Okay. We can put that back. Okay, so there is a motion, but,
We can withdraw the second.
yeah, I think we either withdraw the motion or table it, and then GBEF and the reg and JIC, is it JICL and JICLR?
Yes, which is the
goes
student
back to
version as well,
policy,
yes.
And that'll be first on our agenda next time. So Shane and Caroline, are you good with
Yeah, I withdraw.
I'm okay.
withdrawing your
Yes.
motion? Okay, so Denise, do you have that? All right, so let me, sorry,
I'm glad we
Brian,
didn't do them all as a group now.
yeah, yes, did not know that, okay.
Sorry.
Dan wins again.
Sorry, Stephen, all right, so we'll get back to you on that one.
Thank you.
All right, so the next policy is GCG, substitute staff employment.
I will motion to approve policy GCG as presented.
Okay, do I have a second? By Ginny. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining.
I was waiting for Kate to pop up on that one.
I know.
Yeah. We're unanimous. All right, next one, IHBA, programs for students with disabilities. This was just a change in law because of the age of the student.
Move to approve
By Ellen.
IHBA.
Do I have a second? By Caroline. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, we're unanimous. Next one is JEB, age of entrance. And we are recommending getting rid of the regulation because it is now all in the policy.
A motion to approve policy JEB while eliminating regulation JEBR as it's incorporated into policy JEB.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
By Caroline. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, we're unanimous. And then JICL and JICLR, we are tabling, and that's going, well, that's going to go back to policy.
JSCI also.
I don't have that.
It's right before JSCI.
Yeah, I didn't have that in my packet. Okay. So many policies. All right, so weapons on school property and JICIR.
Those aren't going back to policy, are they?
No, I didn't have
JICI.
JIC in my packet. I was
Oh,
just going
okay.
through my
Move to
packet.
approve JICI and JICIR as presented.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Jared. All, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, okay, we're unanimous. So then JICL and JICLR
Move to approve
will go back.
Hang on.
We're not
This
approving it.
this
Those are
has
the
this
policy.
thing on it. They're going back to policy.
Yeah.
These are going back to policy to be reviewed, and you'll see them
That's
again.
what Mr. Bourget,
Yeah.
look at the last page. We got it's of the regulation.
Oh, this is the one
This
with
is
the
the one.
regulation.
Yeah, this is the other one.
All
yeah.
right, so the next part is new policies, and you have a packet, so just read through. I'm not going to go through them tonight, so just read through them. Next board meeting, we'll have questions and answers. Yes, go ahead, you had something.
Yeah,
on
we
one
did
of
have
them.
one on this. So on policy JRA, we list, under directory information, we list student photographs, and that is not our practice. We have not done that, so I'd like to just remove.
What page?
Page 1, number 4.
Remove, hi, Stephen.
Thank you, Stephen. So I have the packet in front of me. I wasn't finding it. Stephen did it
It's
from
the
memory.
first
So
page.
thank
All
you,
right.
Stephen, for that.
So we don't do that.
The existing policy does not have photography listed there, and right now we have parental consent to
permission.
distribute
Right, for
photographs.
photographs. Okay.
The draft model policy that has gone through the policy review committee would revoke that parent consent to distribute photographs as directory information.
Okay, all right, awesome. So we scratch that.
We're just going to cross off that
Yep.
one item.
That works.
And renumber
And
the
renumber.
rest.
And renumber, yes.
I had the same thought.
Renumber.
Good call.
All right,
What
so
did we take off? I'm sorry.
JRA.
number
Number
4. student photographs are just coming right off.
We don't do that.
Just cross number 4 off.
And renumber number 5 to 4,
Right.
et cetera.
Okay, so moving on, we have an overnight field trip request. Go ahead, Brian.
We do, so this is All-State Music Festival from March 30th until April 1st, up in the Fairfield Inn in Concord, with events being held at Concord High School. So we would certainly recommend that we move forward with this. I don't have a number of students. I think it depends on how many students are eligible for it. But this is a field trip that we've done for many, many years. And we would, because it's an overnight, we would be asking for your permission, please.
Ginny?
I'd make a motion to accept the trip to the All-State Musical Festival on March 30th to April 1st, 2023.
All right.
Second.
Do I have a second by Shane? Any further discussion?
Yep, that's, I usually ask, it's Friday to Saturday.
Uh-huh.
Are they missing educational class time?
I don't believe they do. I
Okay.
think they go in the afternoon.
That's what I
yeah.
remember too.
From last year.
Because those
And
All-States
and
usually
kids have to travel, so there's,
Yep.
you know, kind of a large catchment basin that kids are traveling there. And this is the one site for the whole state. So people from the North Country are coming down.
Nice. All right, so we have a motion, we have a second. Do we have any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining? Okay, we're unanimous. Have fun.
Thank you.
School staffing.
So for staffing, you do have a staffing sheet, and I am very pleased to bring a recommendation for the board's consideration of Kurt McDermott for the curriculum coordinator position here at Goffstown High School. This is within budget parameters. We could discuss in non-public if the board needed to, but we are happy to make this recommendation to the board for Mr. McDermott.
Beginning July 1st.
July 1.
2023.
I motion to approve the nomination of Kurt McDermott as the Goffstown High School Curriculum Coordinator effective July 1st, 2023.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
By Caroline. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining? Okay, we're unanimous. Other business that may legally come?
I have actually 2 quickies.
Okay.
The tech committee met, Steve left, but was it last week? I can't remember. And
Oh, yeah.
basically, we had 0 public time. It was all non-public because we were talking about, remember the group had the IBM thing and they were talking about all the security? We talked about all the security and what it's going to cost to try to remediate what was found. So expect that we're probably going to be coming back to the board in the next few months to say this is what we're going to need to do to try to come into parameters to be as secure as possible. Number 1. Number 2, the House passed and adopted House Bill 321. 321 talks about non-public minutes that are sealed. And it says that we can adopt a policy to review those non-public minutes however we want to do it, but if we don't adopt the policy, we must review them within 10 years of having sealed them, or they become public. So if we do nothing, they become public after 10 years. That, of course, will go to the Senate. If it passes the Senate, it'll go to the governor's desk. I just want you guys to know that because it may not have hit our radar.
Right, thank you.
And
Thank
we
you so much.
seal minutes.
Yes, we do.
Thank you.
Dan. All right, our next school board meeting is March 6th, and we do have non-public,
We'll
right?
go under A first.
All right, so I need a motion to go non-public under RSA 91A 32C. Matt?
A, I'm sorry, A.
A. We're doing A first?
We're doing A first.
All right, A. Go ahead, Jared.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, Caroline, do roll call, Retta?
Yes.
Ginny?
Yes.
Jared?
Yes.
Caroline? Shane?
Yes.
Ellen?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Heather? Yes, we are in non-public, so we need to meet